Hey friends, welcome back to the Paranormal M channel. Still having trouble sleeping? Don't worry, I'm right here, doing what I love and helping you drift off a little easier. Thank you so much for all the love and support you've shown the channel, and for sharing so many of your paranormal experiences with us. If you've got more stories, don't hesitate to send them in. Now, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. Turn on your bedside lamp, get comfy in bed, and let's listen to today's paranormal experiences together. Good night. So, I woke up really early one Saturday, the kind of morning where the house is quiet and your brain just starts wandering. And out of nowhere, I got pulled back to when I was little, like preschool little. I don't even know why I remembered it so clearly, but once it came back, it hit me right in the chest. When I was about 3 or 4, I used to mess around on my dad's phone all the time. I'd tap random stuff, play little games, scroll through things I definitely didn't understand. And then there was this one night, late enough that everything felt darker and more serious, and the phone rang. No name, just an unknown number. I remember holding it like it was huge in my hands, and I answered like a little kid answers, like it's no big deal. Me, hello? And this voice comes through, calm, familiar, almost gentle. Hi, Winnie. I swear my stomach dropped, because nobody called me Winnie except my uncle, my mom's brother, Uncle Ray. And the thing is, Uncle Ray had died not that long before. Maybe a year, maybe 2. Time is fuzzy when you're that small, but I knew he was gone. So I just blurted it out. Me, who is this? It's your Uncle Ray. And I didn't even question it the way an adult would. I reacted like a kid who's been missing someone. Me, Uncle Ray? Where have you been? I miss you. And he sounded warm, like he smiled while he talked. I miss you too. I remember my eyes getting all hot, like I was about to cry but also felt relieved, like, oh, there you are. Me, where are you? Are you okay? There was this tiny pause, and then he said it, so simply. I'm okay now. I'm somewhere safe. Where? Heaven. And I just repeated it because I didn't fully get it. Heaven? Yeah, heaven. I remember gripping the phone tighter, like if I held on hard enough, it would bring him closer. Can I see you? And his voice softened even more, like he didn't want to disappoint me. Not right now, but one day, maybe. I didn't know what else to say. I was little. My brain couldn't hold big things like death and heaven and one day maybe. So I did what kids do. I made it simple. Okay, I'll talk to you later. Bye. Bye, Winnie. I'll see you. And then the call ended. That was it. No dramatic sound, no weird glitch, no movie moment. Just silence. The next day I told my dad like it was normal. Like, hey, Uncle Ray called me. And my dad got serious immediately. He kept shaking his head like he was trying to snap me out of a dream. He said, No, Winnie, your uncle is gone. You can't talk to him. And I remember feeling confused and kind of frustrated, because I knew what I heard. I knew the way he said my name. I knew the feeling of it. Then years later, just recently actually, I told my mom about it. And she didn't laugh. She didn't brush it off. She got quiet in this way that made my skin prickle. And she said, really calmly, that Uncle Ray had visited her too, more than once, over the years. And honestly, that's the part that made it feel even more real. Because if it was just a kid imagining things, why would my mom have her own stories? So yeah, I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was something spiritual, or some strange coincidence, or a memory my brain turned into something bigger. I just know it stayed with me. And sometimes, when I think about it, I don't even feel scared. So, I need to tell you what's been going on, because it's one of those things that sounds unreal even as I'm saying it out loud. A couple nights ago, I woke up suddenly with that sharp feeling you get when you swear someone's looking at you. My room was quiet, but my whole body went alert. And then I saw it, this pale, human-shaped haze, like white smoke that somehow had a shape to it. The part that still makes my skin prickle is where it seemed to come from, the tall mirror across from my bed, like it peeled itself right out of the reflection. It didn't rush at me or anything, it just walked. Slow, like it already belonged there. I panicked. I didn't even think. I just bolted out of my room and went straight to my mom's room. Her name's Maribel, and she's the kind of person who sleeps like the world could end and she'd still be comfortable. I was shaking her awake, whisper yelling, trying not to sound completely unhinged. And then, this is the part that made me feel trapped. It followed me. I could see it lingering in the corner, like the air had thickened into a silhouette. I tried to stay calm, but I couldn't sleep. I just stared into that corner, watching it without blinking, afraid that if I looked away, it would get closer. Sometimes it did drift nearer to my mom's side of the bed, and I'd instinctively wave my hand through it like I was shooing smoke away from a candle. I know how ridiculous that sounds, but I was terrified, like primal terrified. The next day, it started messing with things in my room. Small things, but enough to make my stomach drop. I have this little magical girl figurine on my shelf, an anime character named Haruka Shinomiya, and I caught the smoky shape hovering around it, like it was drawn to it. It happened more than once, too, like it kept coming back to that exact spot. At one point, I saw something like a side profile in the haze, cheekbone, chin, the suggestion of hair, and I swear I felt my heart try to climb up into my throat. Then I saw it do something that made it feel real in the worst way. It pressed what looked like a hand against my wall. A hand that wasn't solid, just concentrated smoke, but shaped like fingers in a palm. I remember whispering, "Nope," out loud, like that would change anything. That night, my mom saw it too. I walked into my room and she was standing in the doorway, wide-eyed, staring at my bed. She told me she saw it sitting there, like it was perched on the edge, calm as you please. And Maribel doesn't scare easy, but she genuinely panicked. She started praying immediately, like it was the only thing her body knew how to do. Today, it's worse, or maybe clearer. I don't know. It's like once my brain learned how to see it, it can't stop seeing it. I've been noticing more than one smoky figure now. Different shapes, different corners, different little movements, like they're not all the same presence. If I had to guess, I'd say at least 3, maybe more. It's not like they line up and introduce themselves, you know? It's more like you catch one in the corner of your vision, then another near the doorway, then something faint by the mirror again. Sometimes, when I put my hand near where I see them, I feel temperature changes. A sudden cold, like the air gets sucked out. Or, this one's hard to explain, a tiny warm sting, like a quick little flare of heat right on my skin. Not enough to hurt, but enough that my brain goes, okay, something is there. I have this memory, clear enough that I can't shrug it off, of being half asleep and feeling someone wrap their arms around me from behind, like a spooning hug. It scared me, yes, but it also felt comforting, warm, like somebody trying to calm me down. I remember thinking, I'm too tired to deal with this, and just letting it happen because it felt oddly safe in that moment. That's why I keep going back and forth in my head, because not everything about this feels threatening. But there's a but. Some of them make me feel off, like my whole body heats up, especially my stomach. Earlier, I tried to take a nap, and I felt this weight settle on my chest, like something laid itself there. I got nauseous, jittery, nervous in this deep chemical way. Like my body knew it didn't like what was happening, even if my brain couldn't explain it. So now I'm stuck in this awful middle place. Part of me wants to believe maybe they're just there, maybe curious, maybe even protective in their own weird way. And another part of me is terrified because I've been through something before. When I was younger, I had an experience that felt like possession, and it was genuinely one of the worst days of my life. I don't want to relive anything even remotely like that. I don't want to accidentally invite something in or let my guard down and regret it. I'm trying to stay calm. I really am. I'm more steady than I was at the start, but I can't pretend I'm not scared. It's the kind of fear that makes you listen to every creak in the house and feel your own heartbeat in your throat. And I keep thinking, if these are spirits, if that's what this is, how am I supposed to tell what's harmless versus what's malicious? What do you even look for? What do you do if they're benevolent? And what do you do if they're not? Honestly, I'm open to anything at this point. Religious, spiritual, pagan, practical, whatever. I just want to know how to protect myself, how to keep my home feeling like my home again, and how to make sure I don't end up in that nightmare place I swore I'd never return to. So there's this little trail near my neighborhood. Nothing dramatic, honestly. It's a short one, like 10 minutes end to end, and my friends and I wander it sometimes when we feel like getting out of the house. But this was the first time we'd gone during fall. You know that sound dead leaves make when you walk on them? That loud, crunchy, impossible to be stealthy sound? Yeah, that was us, just stomping through the dark like a little parade. And for context, we've had moments out there before, like thinking we saw something move, or getting a random wave of unease. But it's always been vague. Nothing you could point to and say, that right there. Until last night. It was somewhere around 8:30 p.m. when I went with my cousin Mara and our friend Eli. We get to the trailhead, and we're not even a quarter of the way in when Eli slows down and glances over his shoulder. He goes, really casually at first, "Do you hear that? Like, footsteps behind us?" Mara and I kind of pause, listen, and I don't hear anything definite, just leaves, distant wind, the usual night sounds. But the way Eli said it wasn't jokey. It was that tone people use when they're trying not to freak anyone out. We keep walking anyway. And then, maybe 10 seconds later, Eli stops again, sharper this time. "Okay, I swear I just heard a voice. Over there." He points into the woods on our right. So we all stop. Full stop. No leaf crunching, no talking over each other, nothing. Mara immediately goes, "I've had a bad feeling since we stepped onto the trail." Like she'd been holding it in and finally admitted it out loud. And she says she heard the voice too, like a quick, weird sound that didn't match anything else around us. Eli adds, "And before the voice, I heard the footsteps again." Meanwhile, I'm standing there realizing I'm the odd one out, because I hadn't felt or heard anything strange up to that point. But I believed them. Their faces weren't, "Let's mess with you." They were pale, listening too hard. So we agree, pretty quickly, that we're done for the night. We turn around and start walking back toward the road. And weirdly, the walk out feels normal. No more sounds, no more weird feelings. Just us, the flashlight beam, the crunch of leaves. Almost like whatever it was had decided to stop performing. Now, the entrance to this trail is set up kind of oddly. There's a little sign by the road, and it's surrounded by bushes. You walk through a narrow path in the bushes into this small clearing, and then on the other side of the clearing, that's where the actual trail begins. So we cross the clearing, heading back out, and we step into that tight little corridor of bushes. And that's when my body reacts before my brain does. I suddenly feel on edge. like the hair on my arms isn't just standing up, it's listening. I stop, turn around, and swing my flashlight beam back into the clearing and toward the trail. Nothing. No movement, no figure, no eye shine. Just empty space and leaves and darkness. But I still get that cold, crawling chill up my spine anyway. I face forward again, and not even 2 seconds later, right as we're about to break out of the bushes onto the road, I hear it. A weird, breathy little wheeze from the left side of the bushes, close enough that it felt like it came from inside that leafy wall. And it sounded like a young voice trying to speak through a tight throat, like, "Hey." Just that. Hey. And I know how this sounds, but it wasn't like someone calling from far away. It wasn't a clear adult voice. It was small and strained, almost like someone testing whether we'd respond. I was the only one who heard it. I immediately blurted out something like, "Did you guys hear that? It sounded like someone just said, 'Hey,' right there." We spill out onto the road and turn around, shining our lights into the bushes where I heard it. Nothing. No person, no animal, no rustling, no footsteps, just bushes. So we leave. We go back home, hang out, try to laugh it off, but of course we keep circling back to it, replaying it, comparing what each of us heard, trying to make it fit into something normal. And when I describe the voice, how it was breathy and kind of young, Eli just looks at me and goes, "That's the same thing I heard deeper in the trail." Which didn't make me feel better, at all. And here's the part that's been sitting heavy in my mind since. Earlier this year, Mara and one of her friends went off the trail a bit, just wandering, not thinking, and they found a rope hanging from a tree, like a noose. They showed me the spot another time, and I saw it too, but we never heard anything about someone actually dying out there. No news story, no neighborhood talk, nothing. So I don't know what that means, if it means anything at all. I just know that I already believed in paranormal stuff before this, mostly because I've had my own experiences at home, things I've seen. But last night was the first time I can honestly say I heard something I can't explain. And it was also the first time I've ever had something like this happen with other people there with me, where we were all picking up on pieces of it, like we each caught a different part of the same thing. It's not some huge movie-level haunting story. Nothing chased us. Nothing grabbed us. We got out fine. But it changed something for me, because now it doesn't feel like it's just bad vibes anymore. Now it feels like there's something in there. And the scariest part is how casual it was. Just a quiet little, "Hey," from the bushes, like it wanted me to turn my head one more time. Hey, can I tell you something that started as a joke, but stopped feeling funny a long time ago? So, growing up, my family moved a lot. Different cities, different schools, always chasing the next place we could afford. I got used to packing fast and saying goodbye faster. But there was one year that still sits in my chest like a stone. I was 11 when I had to live away from my parents for a while. Not because anyone wanted it that way, just because there wasn't enough food and not enough money. And somehow, I was the problem that could be solved by sending me elsewhere. I ended up in a house with people I barely knew, in a neighborhood that didn't know me at all. And loneliness, wow. Loneliness at that age is loud. It's not quiet sadness. It's like getting hit by a truck and then being expected to act normal. So I started talking. Not to friends. I didn't have those yet. I talked to the things that wouldn't walk away. The plants on the windowsill, the ceiling fan, the moon, the stars whenever I could see them. I'd whisper like they were listening, like they were keeping my secrets safe. Years went by. I got older, got more curious, read more. I was raised Buddhist, and I started asking questions, real questions, the kind you can't neatly tuck into a lesson. And the more I saw people using religion like a tool, like a way to control others or show off, I got angry. Not at belief exactly, more at what people did with it. So one day, half out of spite and half out of boredom, I made up my own god. I know, it sounds ridiculous. That was the point. I called it Kiri. Not from any holy book, not from any tradition. Just a name that felt like it belonged to something that only existed for me. I made up rules like it was a game. Little rituals, tiny promises, bargains that were more like dares. And I'd talk to Kiri the way I used to talk to the moon. Softly, privately, like I was embarrassing myself on purpose. At first, my wishes were silly, teen stuff. Please let me get out of trouble. Please let this one awkward thing go away. Please let me pass this test even though I barely studied. Things like that. And then, this is where it gets weird. Some of them came true. Not in a magical lightning bolt way, more like life would tilt, just slightly, in the direction I asked. And when something didn't happen the way I wished, something else would happen that felt better than the original wish, like I got upgraded without ordering it. I laughed it off for years. Coincidence, I told myself. Confirmation bias. I even liked the idea that my brain was just being dramatic. But then I started doing this thing. I don't even know what to call it. Future guessing? Like, I'd have two possible outcomes in mind. Let's call them option A and option B. And I'd use something random, like flipping a coin or a little spinner app on my phone. I'd tell myself, okay, Kiri, if A is likely, give me the same result 3 times in a row. Like 3 blacks or 3 heads or whatever. And sometimes, it hit 3 in a row. And then later, A would happen. Not every time, but enough times that it started crawling under my skin. I still kept it playful. I treated it like a private joke between me and my imaginary god. If anyone had asked, I would have shrugged and said, I'm just messing around. Then a couple years ago, I got into gotcha. Hard. The kind of hard where you tell yourself you're just spending a little, and then suddenly you're tracking probabilities like it's your job, chasing that one pull that'll finally make you feel satisfied. I started wishing constantly, over and over. And weirdly, the wishes stopped working the way they used to. I got more desperate. I kept asking, kept bargaining, kept pushing, like I could force luck to obey. I told myself, if Kiri won't answer, then fine. What if something darker would? I didn't really believe in devils, not truly, but I said it anyway, like a dare thrown into the dark. If something's here, if anything's listening, I'll trade something. Years, luck, anything. Just give me what I'm asking for. I even said it with that half laugh people use when they want to pretend they don't mean it. And then things started happening again. Not just for me. Sometimes I'd wish for my friend, too. My friend, Mina. She'd ask for something small. An outcome, a message, a moment of luck. And I'd do my little ritual and say, okay, Kiri, handle it. And it would happen often enough that we stopped laughing the same way. We tested it too, like we were trying to prove ourselves wrong. We kept notes. We tried different methods, spinners, coins, random number generators. We'd make predictions and score them. Over weeks, it felt like we were hitting something like 8 out of 10. 8 out of 10 is way too high to feel normal. I didn't know whether to feel proud or terrified. Mostly I felt uneasy, like I'd opened a door and couldn't remember why I thought it was a good idea. One night, Mina looked at me and said, really quietly, "Are you sure that's a god?" I swear my whole body went cold. because the second she asked that, all the jokes drained out of the room, and I realized I didn't actually know what I'd been talking to, or if I'd been talking to anything at all. After that, I stopped. Completely. I didn't wish. I didn't bargain. I didn't test. I tried to forget. I told myself it was a phase, a coping mechanism, a lonely kid habit that grew up with me. Over a year passed. I almost felt normal again. And then, yesterday happened. I was in a convenience store, standing in front of the drinks, doing that quiet math people do when they're trying to stretch a tiny budget across a whole month. I remember staring at the price tags and feeling this tired, sour panic, like, okay, this is what I have left. And without thinking, without planning, I whispered in my head, Kiri, just let me get a free one. Just one. You know those promotions where you can win a free drink from a lucky label or code? That kind of thing. I bought one. And I won. I stood there, blinking at the label like it was a prank. I went to exchange it for the free drink. I opened the new one. Won again. I laughed, nervous laugh, not happy laugh, and exchanged it again. Won again. This kept going until it stopped feeling like a joke and started feeling like a spotlight on my life. Like something was saying, remember me? 12 times. 12 consecutive wins. By the time I walked out, my hands were actually shaking. Not from excitement, from that same chill I felt when Mina asked me that question. Because I don't know what it means. Maybe it's just probability doing something wild once in a lifetime. Maybe it's a glitch. Maybe I'm noticing patterns because I'm scared and my brain wants a story. Maybe Kiri is just a name I gave to my own desperate hope. But also, I can't unfeel what I felt. I can't unremember the way life kept bending at the exact moments I whispered into the dark. So I'm asking you, honestly, what do you think? Not, is it real? I don't even know how to define real anymore. I mean, if you were me, would you call it luck? Or would you stop and wonder who, or what, has been listening all this time? So, let me take you back for a second. When I was around 12, I'm 24 now, I lived in this big, tired old house that always felt like it was holding its breath. We didn't know much about its history, but my family found this brittle newspaper stuffed inside a wall during a renovation, and the date on it was 1934. I remember staring at it like it was a clue from a mystery novel, like the house had just handed us a secret. The place was huge. Not fancy huge, more like, why are there so many doors, and why do half of them lead to weird little nothing rooms huge? I used to count everything, obsessively. At one point, I swore it had 15 rooms, and I'd walk around like a little inspector, keeping score in my head. There were corners of that house that felt like they belonged to someone else. There were 2 basements, which sounds dramatic, but it was actually just unsettling. One was right off the garage, an old, stubborn door that led down into this concrete cellar. It smelled like cold dust and metal, and you could get to some of the house's ducts down there. The other basement was inside the house, the one we used more, and that's where the laundry was, along with a storage room that always felt like it was waiting for you to look away. Even our bedrooms had their own little, "this place is weird" features. Mine and the room next to it both had crawl spaces that disappeared into the walls. I shoved furniture in front of a couple of them, dressers mostly, like that would somehow make them less real. I never told anyone I did it out of fear. I probably pretended it was just for more space or something. But yeah, it wasn't for space. The house made noises constantly. Pipes clicking, floorboards popping, the slow groan of wood settling. and we couldn't afford to heat it properly through the winter, so we'd hang blankets in doorways and tape plastic over the windows. It worked, kind of, but it also made the whole place feel dim and sealed off, like the daylight couldn't quite reach us. And when I was home alone, that's when it got bad. I'd get this awful feeling like someone was right behind me, close enough that if I turned around too fast, I'd bump into them. I'd whip my head around over and over, trying to catch nothing. Sometimes I'd even yell out, just to prove I wasn't scared. Like, "Hello? Anyone there?" Trying to sound tough while my voice cracked because I was 12 and terrified. Looking back, I know how it sounds. A dark house, a kid with an imagination, the normal, creepy soundtrack of an old building. I get it. But the feeling was real. It stuck to me. Then one day, I went downstairs to switch the laundry. I remember it clearly because nothing about it was unusual at first. Just me carrying a basket, the hum of the machines, that stale basement air. I switched the clothes over, grabbed the basket, turned, and noticed this big tank against one of the outer walls of the laundry room. It wasn't a water heater. It looked older than that, like it belonged to some long-forgotten system the house used to have, some reservoir or storage tank for something that didn't exist anymore. Nobody ever touched it. It sat there quietly like a piece of the house's skeleton. It was always coated in dust, like thick dust, the kind that looks untouched for years. But this time, it wasn't untouched. There were handprints all over it. Dozens. I just froze. You know that moment where your body reacts before you even get a thought together? That was me. My stomach dropped, my skin went tight, and the inside of my head went completely quiet except for one word. Nope. I don't remember setting the basket down. I don't remember backing away. I remember turning and sprinting up the stairs like something was right behind me. Like if I slowed down, it would grab my ankle. I stayed upstairs the rest of the day. I wouldn't go back down. I didn't even want to walk near the basement door. And the worst part wasn't the tank itself. It was what my mind did afterward. Because once you've seen something like that, your brain starts trying to solve it. It starts building explanations out of whatever scraps it can find. And half of those explanations are worse than the truth. Maybe someone did it as a prank. Maybe it was old handprints I'd never noticed. Maybe the long fingers were just smears. Maybe. But I couldn't stop picturing hands in the dark, pressing into the dust when nobody was there to see it. Fast forward to now. I moved into a new apartment recently. Nothing like that old house. Brighter, cleaner, normal. And in the garage, I noticed a few black handprints on one of the walls. Not dusty ones, darker, like smudges. And the thing is, I don't remember them being there when I moved in. Could they have been? Sure. Maybe I just didn't notice. Garages are easy to ignore until you're looking for something. But the second I saw them, my chest did that same little drop it did when I was 12. It brought me right back to that basement, that tank, those prints. I'm not exactly panicking about it now. I'm older and I've got a better grip on myself. I know there are a lot of normal reasons you could end up with handprints on a wall. People moving stuff in, leaning, touching surfaces without thinking. It's just, it still makes me uneasy. Because that moment in the laundry room never really left me. It's like one of those memories that isn't loud all the time, but it's always there in the background, waiting for the right trigger to wake up. And honestly, that house had other moments, other things that didn't quite add up, stuff I tried to laugh off later but couldn't fully shake. So I guess that's why I'm telling you, because I've carried it for years, and sometimes it helps just to say it out loud, to let someone else hear it and go, yeah, that is strange, or here's what it might have been. Or even just, I get why that freaked you out. And if you ever want to hear more of what happened in that house, trust me, there's more. Hey, so I grew up just outside Lewiston, and I've lived around here long enough that most places feel familiar in my bones. That's part of why what happened recently hit me so hard. You probably know what I mean, the shooting. The thing everyone talks about in clipped sentences, like if we keep it small, it won't swallow us. What I'm about to tell you isn't some grand theory, and I'm not trying to solve anything. It's just something that happened to me in the day leading up to it. The kind of story people hear and immediately decide you must be exaggerating. I'm not. I wish I were. So, about 24 hours before everything happened, I had one of those stress spirals where my sense of self starts slipping. If you've never dealt with dissociation, it's hard to explain without sounding dramatic. It's like your mind turns into a tug-of-war rope and you're holding on with burning hands, trying not to get pulled into a version of you that doesn't feel like you. When it gets bad, I do weird grounding stuff. Not dangerous, just symbolic. That night, I decided I was going to burn a small bag of clothes I'd been clinging to, pieces that felt tied to the part of me I was trying to quiet down. Think of it like trying to let go of a skin you're terrified will grow back. There's this wooded area I go to when I need to be alone. People around here have spots like that, little pockets of trees where you can breathe without an audience. And when I got there, I heard gunshots. Not one or two, a lot. Rapid, over and over. Now, this is Maine. Hearing gunfire isn't automatically a red flag. It could have been someone target practicing, could have been a range nearby, could have been any number of normal, everyday things. But that night, it made my stomach go cold anyway. Like my body noticed something my brain hadn't caught up to yet. I kept walking, trying to convince myself I was fine. I made it to a place I sometimes crash when I'm not doing well, a tucked-away spot not too far from this local bar and rec place people know well. Not right next door, but close enough that you could hear the hum of cars if the wind was right. And by then, the gunshots had stopped. The silence afterward was worse. Normally, I'm kind of on autopilot when I'm out there, but that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. Not in a spooky, there's a ghost way, but in a very human, very practical way. Like someone else was out there too, watching the same tree line. I told myself I was being paranoid. I even laughed at myself a little like, okay, calm down. You're not the main character in a horror movie. And then I started heading back. When I came out near the path entrance, there was a car parked right where I'd gone in. And I mean right there. Like, lined up parallel to the trail, positioned in a way that made it feel intentional. This isn't a busy pull-off. It's not the kind of place where someone accidentally stops unless they have a reason. My heart started doing that awful hammering thing. I stood there for a second, trying to act normal, because there's this instinct we all have. If you pretend you're not scared, maybe the world will believe you and make it true. But the car didn't move. I left. I didn't call the cops. Around here, people don't always call over gunshots unless they're certain. It's not that folks don't care. It's that you learn, over time, what gets taken seriously and what gets shrugged off. When I got home, I crashed hard, mentally, emotionally. I'm going to be honest with you. I was in a bad place. The kind of place where your thoughts start whispering really cruel options. I didn't do anything, but I got frighteningly close to not wanting to be here anymore. And then I had this experience I still can't put into neat words. It felt like I left. Like I died for a second. Not in a dramatic movie way, more like a light flickering off. And then I came back. The strange part was the feeling that the me I'd been fighting, the other voice, the other self, took the hit. Like it stepped forward and absorbed the fall, and then I opened my eyes and I was still here. I know how that sounds. Believe me, I know. The next day I tried to go to work, but I was foggy. I couldn't eat. I couldn't focus. Everything felt slightly out of sync, like the world was running a fraction of a second ahead of me. Around early evening, I ordered food, some fast food delivery, nothing special. And while I was waiting, this wave hit me. You ever get that deep, physical dread that doesn't start in your thoughts, but in your body? Like something grips you from the inside? That's what it was. It landed in my gut, sharp and cold, and suddenly I was sick, violent, unstoppable sick. And with it came these flashes in my head, a countertop, a jar, a specific angle of light, like a memory trying to force its way through a locked door. And then, this is the part that still makes my throat tighten. I had this sudden sense of childhood trauma. Not a full movie of it, more like a horrible realization without a clear picture. Like my mind was saying, this happened, but not offering a name or a face. I wasn't trying to invent anything. I wasn't sitting there thinking, let me create a story. It just surfaced, like something buried finally cracked open under pressure. I checked the clock during all of it, because I was trying to anchor myself in reality, and it was 6:38 p.m. That time is burned into me now. I remember thinking, someone is hurt. Not me. Someone else. It was the same feeling you get when bad news is about to arrive, like your body knows before your phone rings. I kept thinking of that scene in a sci-fi movie, where the wise old character suddenly winces like they've felt 1,000 people disappear at once. That's the closest comparison I've got. It was grief without a source, terror without a target. And then the news started unfolding. The locations, the timing, it all threaded through places I knew too well. I spent years bouncing around Lewiston when my life was unstable. I've slept rough near the same stretches of town. I've walked past the same doors. I've stood outside the same buildings, hungry and exhausted, staring at the lights inside like they belonged to another species of human. When they said where it happened, I felt my chest drop. Because those weren't abstract dots on a map to me. Those were real corners I've stood on. A friend of mine, Riley, texted me later and asked if I was okay, and I remember staring at the message thinking, how do you answer that? How do you say, I'm alive, but I don't feel fully returned to my own life? Because 2 months earlier, I'd had this bizarre, humiliating moment where a stranger in a restaurant screamed at me, called me disgusting names, accused me of things that weren't true, over something as stupid as the shirt I was wearing. A pink anime tee. That's it. And it wasn't just an insult. It was like she needed me to be a villain so she could feel righteous. And after the shooting, that memory didn't feel random anymore. It felt like a pattern. Like something in this town gets under people's skin and turns them into mirrors for their worst fears. A couple days after, I started watching this old anime called Paranoia Agent. It's about a community that keeps blaming a mysterious figure for everything. Like if you can point at a phantom, you don't have to look at your real pain. And I couldn't stop thinking about that. Because that's what it feels like here sometimes. Like there's a shadow that moves through Lewiston. Not a literal ghost, not some cartoon monster, but something heavier than that. Something that feeds off fear and isolation, and the way people quietly give up on each other. And listen, I know I sound like I'm rambling. I know how easy it is to roll your eyes at this. I'm not asking you to believe in magic or secret plots or anything like that. I'm just telling you what it felt like to be in my body in the hours before it happened. The gunshots in the woods, the car at the trail, the sudden sickness and dread, the way my mind cracked open and spilled things I wasn't ready to see, the way the whole town seemed to tilt, like the ground under it had been hollow for a long time. All I know is this: something is wrong here. Maybe it's just trauma layered on trauma. Maybe it's the way pain echoes in a small place and starts sounding like prophecy. But whatever it is, I don't want it to take anyone else. So if you're listening to this and you've ever felt that same kind of invisible pressure, like the air itself is warning you, please don't ignore it. Take care of yourself. Stay close to the people who keep you steady. And if you're ever passing through Lewiston and you feel uneasy for no reason, trust that feeling. Okay, so I don't tell this story often, but I'm going to try to get through it with you. When I was about 6, we moved into this older house that belonged to my dad's parents. It wasn't run down exactly, but it had that feeling, like the air was heavier inside than it should have been. The kind of place where you'd walk in and immediately lower your voice without even realizing you were doing it. And weird stuff started happening almost right away. At night, you'd hear clinks and shuffles in the kitchen, like someone was moving around in there, but the hallway would be empty. Lights would flick on by themselves. Small things would go missing, like a fork or a set of keys, and then turn up somewhere that made no sense, like inside a cabinet we didn't even use, or on the basement steps. My mom swore she put a pair of scissors on the counter once and found them later sitting in the bathtub upstairs. We'd hear what sounded like little kids giggling, but it would be coming from places no kids were, downstairs or right outside my little brother's room. And sometimes, late at night, these dark shapes would move across the corners of your vision. You'd blink and they'd be gone, but your stomach would still drop like they were still there. I had one moment in that house that still makes my skin go tight when I think about it. So, my bedroom had this door that led directly down into the basement. Not a normal, down-the-hall basement door. This one was in my room. Our basement was kind of half above ground, and the living space sat on top of it, so the door was there like it belonged. One night, I woke up to the slow creak of that door opening. I remember thinking, half asleep, oh, it's just Mom checking the laundry, because the washer and dryer were down there. I didn't even sit up at first. I just stared toward the door, waiting for a familiar shape. But what stepped into that doorway wasn't my mom. It wasn't my dad either. It was this figure. Just darkness shaped like a person, but wrong somehow. Too still, too quiet. And the worst part was the feeling that it was looking at me, like it knew I was awake, like it was waiting to see what I'd do. I couldn't move. I couldn't even breathe right. I did the only thing a terrified 6-year-old can do. I yanked the blanket up over my head and squeezed my eyes shut so hard it hurt. I stayed like that until I don't even remember when. I must have passed out from fear. That was the first and last time I ever saw that thing directly. But it wasn't the end of what was happening in that house. Not even close. A couple months later, my little sister, let's call her Mia, was 2, almost 3. Just a tiny kid. And she started saying this same sentence over and over, like it was a normal part of life. Do you see the black kitty? Black kitty. Only we didn't have a cat. We didn't have any pets. So at first we did what families do. We laughed a little, brushed it off, figured it was just toddler imagination, until it wasn't cute anymore. Because then the night started. I'd be asleep and suddenly I'd hear Mia screaming like she was being chased, like real, panicked, choking sobs. And she'd be yelling, clear as day, "The black kitty is gonna get me! It's coming! It's coming!" And And I know how that sounds. I know it sounds like something from a horror movie, but I can't even explain to you what it does to your brain to hear those words coming out of a 2-year-old at 2 in the morning. She wasn't playing. She wasn't half dreaming. She was terrified. And Mia kept talking about the cat, but the way she talked about it changed. It wasn't Kitty anymore. It was Black Cat. Always Black Cat. And always with this warning in her voice, like she was reporting something she couldn't stop seeing. Eventually, my grandma told a family friend about it. This woman named Renee who, honestly, I didn't know what to make of at the time. She wasn't loud or dramatic. She didn't come in trying to scare anyone. She was calm, gentle, but the second she stepped inside, her whole expression shifted. Like her body registered something before her mind even spoke. She looked at my mom and said, very quietly, something like, "There's something here that doesn't want your family here." And then she added the part that made my mom's face drain. "It's focused on the little one, because she's young, because she's open." A few days later, Renee came back and said she wanted to bless the house. She walked room to room, doing what she called anointing, moving slowly, speaking under her breath, touching door frames. The air felt tense, like the house was holding itself still. She did every room, mine, my sister's, the kitchen, the basement door, even the closets, until she got to my mom's bedroom. And then she stopped. She told my mom she couldn't step across that doorway, not even a foot. She said it like it was a rule, like it wasn't up for discussion. My mom was already exhausted and scared out of her mind, so she listened. Renee did something in my mom's room. I didn't see all of it, but I remember how the hall got colder. Not the normal drafty kind of cold, the kind of cold that feels deliberate. When she was done, she told my mom to open the back door that led outside from her room. My mom opened it, and right then, there was this rush, this wave of freezing air that moved through the doorway and out into the night. So cold you could actually see it in the air, like mist. It hit my mom's legs hard enough that her pajama bottoms fluttered, like something had just swept past her. And then, just like that, it was gone. No more giggling, no more footsteps, no lights turning on, no kitchen noises, no missing objects reappearing in weird places. And Mia stopped screaming about the black cat. The house became normal. Quiet in a way it had never been before. Not long after that, we moved anyway. My parents didn't want to risk anything starting up again. And honestly, I don't blame them. I still think about it sometimes, even now. It's been years and years, and I can still feel that moment. The creak of the basement door, the weight in the room, the way my whole body turned to ice. And I hate talking about it. I really do. But there's a small part of me that feels like saying it out loud gives it less power. Like I'm finally taking something back from that house. So, yeah, that's what happened. That's the closest I can get to explaining it. And even telling you now, I've got goosebumps. So, I've had sleep paralysis a few times before, and honestly, it usually doesn't shake me up too badly. But this one had a different weight to it. Last night, the moment I finally drifted off, I was suddenly somewhere else. It felt like an old university campus, like those older brick-built colleges with that kind of solemn, historic vibe. Everything was wrapped in this thick blue-gray mist. Not like normal fog either. More like the whole world was tinted. And there wasn't a sky, not really. No stars, no moon, No light source at all. Just haze. Like the scene was lit from nowhere. I realized I was standing near a roadway, right by a curb, facing a sidewalk. I stepped up onto the sidewalk, then started walking down this grassy slope, maybe a 15-foot drop. Not steep, but enough that you feel yourself descending. And while I'm walking down, I have this strange awareness that there are people around me. A lot of them. But nobody's interacting. Nobody looks at anyone else. No eye contact, no acknowledgement. Like we're all sharing the same space, but acting like we're alone. At the bottom of the hill, there's this wide sidewalk that runs along the base of a big building, 5 stories tall, red brick. And the building felt important in the way it loomed over everything. What grabbed me immediately were these 2 massive arched passageways, each one maybe 20 feet tall, set apart from each other, like 40 feet or so. And both of them were filled with this dark black mist. Not shadow, mist, like something thick and moving. I couldn't see into either archway at all. Between those arches, up on the 3rd floor, were 4 large windows, wooden frames divided into multiple panes with arched accents at the top. They were pitch black, no reflections, no hint of the foggy sky, nothing. Just blank darkness like someone had cut holes into the world. I'm about halfway down the slope when I see him. Not running, not rushing, just appearing in a way my brain couldn't fully explain, like he was already there and my eyes only caught up afterward. He stepped through the brick wall directly beneath those windows, between the archways, as if the building wasn't solid at all. He was tall, still, wearing that unmistakable brimmed hat. And even though the fog and distance should have made details hard to see, I knew it was him. Like my mind recognized him before I consciously processed it. The Hat Man. He walked straight toward me, and this is the part that really gets under my skin when I replay it. It felt like the crowd around us didn't exist to him, like he'd singled me out the second he arrived. He stopped close, too close, and turned his face toward me. And I swear to you, it was like he looked directly into me, with eyes that weren't really there. Like the idea of eyes, the shape of a gaze without any actual features. Then he put his hand out for a handshake. He spoke 3 sentences. The first one sounded like an introduction, like he said his name or title, but I couldn't understand it. It didn't register as a normal language, more like it slid right off my brain the moment I heard it. The second sentence, I heard perfectly. I'm here now. The third sentence, I remember that I understood it clearly in the moment, and it hit me like it mattered. But the worst part is, I can't recall what it was. Like it got erased. And for a split second, I did something that surprises me even now. I reached my hand out. It wasn't curiosity exactly. It was more one like, he felt familiar. Not friendly, not comforting, but familiar like a presence you've felt before. Like deja vu that has a pulse. As my hand moved, I said, I'm Rowan. Can you repeat the first thing you said? And our hands touched. And that's when I yanked myself back in the only way I could. I shouted, out loud in the dream, maybe out loud in real life too, I'm not sure. I do not accept. The moment I said it, he withdrew his hand. Not angrily, not dramatically, just smoothly, like that was the rule. And then the blackness hit. It swallowed everything. Fog, building, people, like someone turned the universe off. And I snapped into that awful in-between state, fully aware but trapped in my body. Classic sleep paralysis. I could feel myself trying to wake up, trying to move, trying to force sound out. I was panicking but also weirdly focused, like wake up, wake up, wake up was the only thought that mattered. Next to me in bed, my partner, Maya, was there. I tried to get her attention. I tried saying her name. I tried moving my leg, nudging her, anything. I don't even know what finally did it, but she stirred. And the moment she put her hand on me, I jolted awake so hard it startled her. Like I snapped back into myself all at once. I told her, I had a bad dream. And she looked at me, half asleep but serious, and she said, "Yeah, I know. I was having a really weird dream too." That part still messes with me because I wasn't even trying to spook her. But it felt like something had leaked across the room, you know? Like the atmosphere followed me back. I wanted to explain everything right then, but she's the type who really doesn't handle scary stuff before bed. So I just let it go. We both went back to sleep. But today I can't stop thinking about it. I've done a little digging, nothing intense, just reading what people say about the Hat Man and sleep paralysis. And what's strange is, people see him all the time. They describe him all the time. But I haven't really found many who say they actually spoke to him, or touched him, or had him offer a handshake like that. So I keep circling the same question in my head. If he reached out like that, if he said, "I'm here now," what would have happened if I did accept? And maybe this sounds naive, but part of me feels this stubborn pull, like I want to find him again. Not because I'm looking for trouble, more like I want answers. Like I want to face whatever that was on my own terms. Because I can't shake the feeling that that handshake meant something. And I said no. And he listened. Okay, so I need to start by saying I've never actually touched a Ouija board. Not even once. I grew up in a really traditional Catholic household, the kind where you go to Catholic school because it's just what you do. And every adult in your life talks about faith like it's as practical as locking your front door at night. I'm not practicing anymore, but the fear they planted, yeah, that stuck. I still remember this one teacher in high school, Mr. Donnelly, trying to explain why Ouija boards were dangerous, and he put it in a way I've never forgotten. He said it was like picking up your phone, turning on location services, dialing a random number, and having absolutely no idea who's going to answer. That image got under my skin. My parents acted like anything occult wasn't just a bad idea, it was an invitation. They had real, vivid beliefs about possession, exorcisms, all of it. I grew up hearing those stories the way other kids hear campfire tales, except mine were told at the dinner table with full sincerity. So fast forward I get to college, and I meet my best friend, Tessa. Immediately click. She's warm, funny, grounded. The kind of person who makes a dorm room feel like home even if it's just cinder block walls and mismatched bedding. Tessa also had these two friends she'd lived with the year before, Marin and Jules. They didn't end up in the same place the next year, but they still floated around us a lot, especially early on. And I don't know how to say this without sounding dramatic, but from the start, something about them felt off to me. Not like I don't like their vibe, but more like my body would tense up when they came into the room. Marin could be negative in this kind of cold, cynical way, but Jules was different. Jules was quiet, intense, like there was always something heavy standing just behind her. Later I learned she'd been through a lot, serious trauma, the kind that shapes the way someone moves through the world, and she'd never really gotten help for it. It wasn't just sadness, it was like she carried a storm around with her. One afternoon, Tessa and I were sitting on her bed talking about religion, how neither of us was very church anymore, but we still believed in something bigger. Like we had our own private rituals, our own sense that there's more going on than what you can see. And I finally admitted, kind of awkwardly, I don't know what it is, but Jules gives me weird feelings. Tessa got quiet, like quiet. And when I asked if she knew what I meant, she just nodded and said, "Yeah, I didn't want to freak you out. Then she told me this thing that still makes my scalp prickle even now. Apparently, Jules had this antique doll, something she'd pulled from her grandparents' attic and became obsessed with. She carried it around more than you'd expect someone our age to. And Jules claimed there was a spirit attached to it. She had a name for it. She called it the Long Man. Tessa told me that when she lived with Jules and Marin the year before, they used a Ouija board all the time to talk to him, like it was a normal activity, like watching TV together. She said she never participated, but she was around it enough that it seeped into her life anyway. And then she told me what she experienced. She said she would wake up from naps, middle of the afternoon, sunlight still coming through the blinds, and see this huge, billowing shape in the corner of her room. Not a person exactly, more like a tall presence wrapped in shadow, as if the air itself had mass. She said she'd blink and sit up and it would still be there, unmoving, just watching. And then there was the Ouija board incident. Tessa swore to me that once she walked into the living room while they were mid-session, and the little planchette, the piece your fingers rest on, shot off the board like it had been snapped from a rubber band. It flew toward her, not gently, not like it slid, like it got thrown. Jules apparently just said, very casually, he doesn't like extra people. Tessa told me that as move-out got closer, the presence started showing up nearer to her bed, like it was closing distance. And one night, she woke up and felt like it was right there, not in the corner anymore, but looming over her, so close she could barely breathe. She said she couldn't scream, she couldn't move, just this crushing sense of being pinned under something immense. And then, after she moved out, it stopped, like it had been tied to that place, or to them. The part that really messed with me came the next year. A girl we both knew, Lena, ended up moving into that same dorm apartment. I knew Lena from campus stuff and from bonding over being raised Catholic. She was still practicing, still wore a little medal sometimes, but she was also the kind of person who didn't judge me for stepping away. One day, Tessa and I ran into her at the university housing office, and Lena looked wrecked, like she hadn't slept in weeks. Her skin had that hollow, papery look. When I asked if she was okay, she just crumpled. Tears immediately. No warning. So we took her to grab coffee, and once she caught her breath, she told us what had been happening in the apartment. Cabinet doors flying open, slamming shut so hard the wood rattled. Her front door opening and slamming like someone was trying to break in. She actually called the police, and the officers showed up, looked around, didn't find anything, and this is the part that makes me angry for her. They laughed like she was wasting their time. But the worst part wasn't the noise. She said when she tried to sleep, she'd wake up to something cold hitting her face, like a hand smacking her cheek. Not a dream jolt, not a twitch, a deliberate, flat-palmed smack, again and again. And then she started seeing it. A massive figure at the foot of her bed, tall, hazy, like smoke held in the shape of a person, looming, swelling in the darkness. She was so scared she had her sister come stay the night, and her sister saw it too. Not, I think I saw something. Like, she sat up and whispered, "Lena, there's something in here." One night, Lena was showering, and the bathroom cabinets started slamming like someone was rage-searching through them. Then the shower curtain whipped back, ripped open so fast it snapped on the rings, and she heard footsteps pounding up and down the hall outside the door, running, back and forth, like something pacing. That's why she was at housing, begging for a reassignment. Tessa, trying to help, told her, "You should talk to Jules. She lived there." So Lena did. And Jules, apparently, laughed. Just straight up laughed. And said something like, "He doesn't like strangers. Good luck." Lena stayed in that apartment for the rest of the school year, because there weren't openings and housing basically shrugged at her. She just endured it. A couple years later, I ran into her again, and I asked, carefully, if things ever got better. She got this distant look and said there was one final night that felt like a turning point. She and her sister were in the bedroom. Lena had a crucifix on the wall, just a simple one, and she said it started shaking, like vibrating in place. Then it fell. Not slipped. Fell like it had been yanked. The closet door started opening and slamming hard enough to make the hangers rattle, and her sister said, very firmly, "Don't look. Just pray." So they did. They started saying prayers out loud. Catholic prayers Lena knew by muscle memory, even through panic. Over and over, like holding on to a rope in the dark. And then Lena said there was this sudden flash, white, bright, not warm exactly, but clean, like a camera flash filling the whole room. Her sister later told her it was like a wave of light poured down from the ceiling and rushed out the window, like something was being forced out. And after that, Lena said the air changed, like the room settled, like the pressure released. And she swore that for the last few months she lived there, nothing happened again. No slamming cabinets, no footsteps, no cold hands, just quiet. And honestly, I don't know what I believe about all of it. I'm not here to tell you I have answers. But I will tell you this. I've been in rooms that felt heavy for no reason, and I've learned to trust that feeling. And I still won't touch a Ouija board. Not ever. So let me tell you something that still gives me goosebumps when I think about it. In my country, Spain, January 6th is a big deal. It's Epiphany Day, the day of the three wise men. We grow up waiting for them, not Santa, and we give each other gifts like it's our version of Christmas. It was January 6th, 2020, right before the world tilted into the pandemic, and that morning started like any other holiday morning. Until it didn't. My mom, Lucia, was walking across the living room and suddenly her foot didn't move the way it should. Just a tiny thing at first, like her body hesitated. But it wasn't nothing. After a blur of appointments and scans and those awful hospital waiting rooms where time stretches, we learned it was a brain tumor. And in the middle of all that, my parents still did what parents do. They tried to give me joy. That same day, my dad, Javier, handed me an envelope with concert tickets. 2 seats, something my girlfriend at the time, Ines, she's my wife now, and I could go enjoy together. Music was always our thing as a family. We traded concerts like other people trade recipes. I even gave them tickets to a show they'd been excited about, like we were all trying to keep life normal by promising ourselves nights out and loud songs and future plans. Except, none of it happened. COVID arrived like a sudden storm. Concerts were canceled. Hospitals became fortresses. And my mom's treatment got harder and harder. Chemo cycles, weakness, days where she looked smaller in her own clothes. Then, cruelly, she caught COVID while already hospitalized. She was too drained to fight it. She died in the ICU not long after. And then, when I was still trying to understand how a house can feel so quiet after someone is gone, life did it again. About a year later, maybe a little more, my dad died suddenly of a heart attack while hiking in the mountains. He was with his best friend, doing the thing he loved most. Somehow that detail is both comforting and unbearable at the same time. After that, their house became complicated. Not just physically full of stuff, but emotionally full. Every drawer felt like a time capsule. Every sweater still held a shape. I put off sorting anything for ages because it wasn't just cleaning out a house. It was deciding what parts of them I could keep without falling apart. Eventually, one afternoon, I went over alone and told myself I'd just do a little. No big heroic purge. Just open a few cabinets, take a few boxes, breathe through it. And that's when it happened. I was in the TV room, room, same shelf, same dusty familiar light, and I noticed a white envelope sitting there like it had been waiting. Not hidden, not tucked behind books, just there. Before I even picked it up, I felt this strange certainty in my stomach. Like my body knew what my eyes hadn't confirmed yet. Inside were the concert tickets. The last gift my parents had given me. The ones I'd never used. The night out I never got to have with Ines. The future that got erased. But there it was, right in front of me, like someone had placed it gently in my line of sight. I told a couple friends about it, the ones who aren't quick to laugh things off, and they said something that made my throat tighten. They said maybe it was a message. Not some dramatic ghost movie moment, just a nudge. A reminder, like we're still here in some way. We still love you. We didn't make it to your wedding, but we did give you something meant for the life you're living now. Don't forget to enjoy it. And then there's the logical version, the one I can hear in my own head too. Maybe I put it there myself and forgot. Maybe grief scrambled my memory. Maybe my mind wanted it to feel like them because that would mean they were close. Both explanations sit there, side by side, and neither one completely wins. What I can't explain is my reaction. Because if it was a loving sign, it's a beautiful one, right? But when I stood there holding that envelope, instead of feeling comfort, I felt this rush of fear, sharp, animal fear, like the room suddenly had too much air in it. My heart started pounding and I had to leave the house. I walked out like I was escaping something, even though nothing was chasing me. And I still don't really know why. Maybe part of me wanted a sign so badly, and another part of me was terrified of what it would mean if signs were real. Or maybe it was just the shock of being pulled back into that moment, January 6th, 2020, when everything was still intact for one last breath before it all fell apart. I don't know. But I do know that a plain white envelope with a pair of unused tickets made me feel like my parents were suddenly standing just out of sight. And whether that was memory, coincidence, or something else, it stayed with me. Alright, so let me start by saying this. I'm not new to weird nights. I've done enough duty shifts to know that sometimes the bump in the night is just drunk soldiers doing drunk soldier things. And sometimes it's something you can't explain without sounding like you've lost your mind. This happened back when I'd just pinned corporal. Fresh responsibility, trying to do everything by the book. It was my first time as the CQ-NCOIC after 1800 at Fort Cavazos, Texas, back when a lot of people still called it Hood out of habit. I was taking that SOP seriously. Every hour, I'd get up, do my checks, make sure my runner was good, walk the halls, look in on the usual problem areas, then head back to the desk. To kill time, I had my laptop set up in this conference office, one of those fancy rooms where the commanders and senior enlisted meet earlier in the day. After hours, it's dead quiet, like the building's holding its breath. I threw on an anime, something and brutal, the kind of show that makes the hours move a little faster. I'm watching, half relaxed but still keeping an eye on the clock, because duty makes you feel guilty for enjoying anything. And then, out of the corner of my eye, I see someone standing in the doorway. Just for a second, a flash. My brain does that quick scan it always does. Male, maybe mid-30s, white guy, average build. But what made my stomach tighten wasn't the fact that someone was there. It was what he was wearing. He had on an old digital camouflage uniform, the older pattern, and it looked perfect. Not wrinkled, not faded, not lived in. Pristine, like it had never been worn outside of a display case. And he wasn't just standing there casually either. He was squared up like a pissed-off NCO, shoulders back, chest forward. Then he hits me with the knife hand. That hard, sharp point like he's calling me out, like I'm about to get smoked for existing. And then he's just gone. No footsteps, no turning away, no sound. One blink and the doorway's empty. I sat there and told myself the obvious thing. You're tired. It had been a long stretch already. I rolled my shoulders, stood up, stretched, yawned, trying to reset my brain like that would fix it. Then I did my round like normal. Checked on my runner, walked the halls. Everything quiet. I come back, sit down, hit play again. A few minutes later, there he is. Same doorway, same posture. Only this time my mind grabbed onto something else. I recognized him, or at least the shape of him, the vibe. I knew that stance. It hit me like a cold weight in my chest. That looks like Sergeant First Class Marquez. And again, he vanished like smoke. Now I'm fully awake, not sleepy awake. That wired, electric awake where your body is warning you before your brain even catches up. I'm staring at that doorway like it owes me money, trying to make sense of what I'm seeing. The next time he appears, his face is wrong, like it won't hold detail. A blur where features should be. The only thing I can tell for sure is he's got really dark hair. And the knife hand again. Like he's lecturing me without words. I don't know what came over me, but I got mad. Not brave, just done. Like, enough already. I didn't yell. I didn't jump up. I just leaned forward and muttered under my breath, real low, the way you talk to something you don't want to invite closer. Man, you're dead. I don't care what you think. I don't care what you're trying to say. And he faded out, slow, like the air was erasing him. That was the last time I saw him that night, but this one bothered me for a different reason. Because later, when I replayed it in my head, when I forced myself to remember every second, I realized I hadn't really looked at his eyes the first couple times. I was focused on the uniform, the stance, the knife hand, the fact that someone was in my space. But once I did remember the eyes, I swear they weren't eyes. They were just black. Not dark brown, not shadowed, not the light was weird. I mean jet black, like someone poured ink into the sockets. Blacker than a back road at midnight when there's no moon and the trees block out the sky. And that's what shook me the most, because he didn't look wounded. No blood, no missing pieces, no signs of an accident. Nothing that would explain why he'd still be hanging around like some restless spirit. It felt less like a ghost, and more like something wearing a ghost. Like something borrowed the shape of a person and used it like a uniform. I've had run-ins before with shadow figures, those barely there silhouettes that stand where they shouldn't stand. I've seen things that look almost like people but are too dark, like the light refuses to touch them. This felt related to that. Same wrongness, same cold pressure in the room. And then, here's the part that makes my skin crawl even now. I saw it again not long ago. Not on duty, not in some creepy office, in my own barracks room. I'm close to getting out, counting days, doing that thing where you're physically still there but mentally already stepping into the next chapter of your life. I'm in my room, normal evening, and I look up. And there's a soldier standing in front of my dresser. Civilian clothes, white tank top, light blue pants, boots on like he never really came off base, a cap pulled down, arms crossed like he's waiting on me to explain myself. And when he turns just enough for me to see his face, same eyes. That hollow, ink-black stare. like nothing's behind it. No warmth, no humanity. Just this calm, careless emptiness, like it could watch you suffer and not feel a thing. That's when the old nickname people used for the place came back to me. How some soldiers used to call that base a black hole, like it swallowed people, like it pulled at you in a way you couldn't describe until you'd lived there long enough to feel it. And sitting here, thinking about it, I can't help but wonder if that wasn't just dark humor. If maybe people were picking up on something, an energy, a weight, a pull, that fed into the worst outcomes. War deaths, training accidents, suicides. All that pain packed into one place, year after year, like the ground learned how to hold on to it. So yeah, I call them entities. Not to be disrespectful to the dead are the dead. But whatever those black-eyed things are, they don't feel like the dead. They feel like the dark that shows up when there's been too much dying and something decides to look back. It's weirdly hard to talk about this out loud, even now. I kept it to myself for a long time because I didn't want to sound dramatic, or like I was making something out of nothing. But it's been sitting with me, and I think I'm finally ready to say it plainly. So, this happened a few years ago, late spring into summer of 2021. Back then, it was just me and my mom living in this older, creaky house. She worked long shifts, and I was between jobs, so I was home alone a lot. I'd try to keep busy, walk our dog, wash dishes, fold laundry, wipe down counters, just anything to make the day feel normal. And then one afternoon, around lunchtime, maybe a little after 1, I was sitting there eating, half watching something on my phone, when I heard people talking upstairs. Not like a TV, not muffled music, actual voices. It sounded like two adults, maybe a man and a woman, mid-conversation, like they'd already been talking for a while. I couldn't make out the words clearly, but I could tell there were two distinct voices. They even overlapped sometimes, like one interrupted the other. That detail still sticks with me because it felt casual, like they belonged there. Except they didn't. I was alone. My stomach dropped instantly. I went cold all over, and without thinking too hard, I grabbed my dog, Milo, and locked us in the downstairs bathroom. I remember sitting on the closed toilet lid, holding his collar like that would somehow keep both of us anchored to reality. I stayed in there for maybe 20 minutes, maybe longer, just waiting for my mom, Diane, to come home. And the second I heard her car in the driveway, the voices stopped. I told myself it was something explainable. Pipes, neighbors, sound carrying, my imagination. I wanted it to be something explainable. I figured that was the end of it. But the next day, it happened again. Same kind of thing. Midday, quiet house, and then those two voices upstairs, like they were in a room together talking to each other. This time, I didn't hide. I don't know why. Maybe I was angry at how scared I'd been, or maybe I just wanted to prove to myself I had control over it. So I stood at the bottom of the stairs and called out, really simply, like I was talking to someone who'd walked in by mistake. Hello? And I swear to you, the moment I said it, the voices stopped, like a switch flipped. That became the pattern, over and over through that summer. I'd hear them when I was home alone, never when my mom was there. If I stayed quiet, they'd go on longer. If I acknowledged it, even softly, it would cut out immediately. And after the voices started, other little things started happening too. Small at first. The kind of stuff you can convince yourself is normal. A door that was cracked now closed. A sound from a room you hadn't been in. A weird thump when the house settled. But it felt different when it piled up, day after day, always when I was alone. Like the house was testing how much I'd ignore. The scariest moment, the one I still replay sometimes, happened later in the summer, closer to evening. My mom had gone to take my aunt to an appointment out of town, so she was going to be gone for hours. The house felt extra quiet, like it knew I didn't have backup. I was upstairs in my bedroom just lying on the bed, trying to distract myself. Milo was curled near my feet, and then I heard someone sprint up the stairs. I shot upright so fast I felt dizzy, and then, just as suddenly, the running went back down the stairs. Up, down, up again. And here's the part that still makes my skin crawl. It never sounded like the runner stepped off the stairs onto the landing. There was no transition noise, no shift onto the floor, just stairs. Like the person was trapped in that one motion, stuck on the staircase itself. During one of the runs upward, I threw my bedroom door open and leaned out to look, heart hammering so hard it felt like it was shaking my throat. The sprinting stopped instantly, and the staircase was empty. No one. Nothing. Just the dim hallway and the quiet that followed. The kind of quiet that feels too heavy, too intentional. I remember standing there with the door half open, staring and waiting for something to move. Anything. To prove I hadn't imagined it. Milo wouldn't even come to the doorway. He stayed back on the bed, tense, watching me like he didn't want me to go closer. When my mom got home, I told her right away. I was shaken, like I'd been jumped. But she brushed it off, said I was stressed, said the house makes noises, said maybe I dozed off and startled myself. And I didn't argue because I didn't even know how to defend something that didn't leave evidence. But the truth is, I know what I heard. And here's why I'm talking about it now. Whatever that was, it didn't feel like it ended when that summer ended. The upstairs voices and the stair sprinting eventually stopped. But other strange things kept happening over the next couple of years. Things that don't seem limited to the house anymore. Different places, different moments. The same unsettling feeling of being singled out when I'm alone. I'm not even asking for someone to tell me it's definitely paranormal. I'm just asking for someone to help me make sense of it. Because I've tried to explain it away, and I've tried to ignore it, and I've tried to laugh it off. But some part of me still remembers that afternoon, the sound of two people talking upstairs in a house that should have been silent, and I can't shake the feeling that something was there, listening back. So, the creepiest thing I've ever had happen at sea was on a routine night watch in the North Atlantic. I was second officer on the midnight to 4 shift, and it was one of those nights where everything feels steady and quiet. Engine hum, dark horizon, the kind of calm that almost makes you sleepy if you let it. To stay sharp, I was doing slow laps around the bridge, just moving my legs, clearing my head. At about 1:20 in the morning, I passed the starboard bridge window and caught sight of someone out on deck, walking from aft toward the bow. That alone didn't alarm me. On our ship, crew could step outside when they wanted, and sometimes people did if they couldn't sleep. But the timing felt off. It was late, and most people were dead asleep by then. I did another lap. When I came back to that same window, the person had stopped, standing in this awkward spot between the forward cargo area and the windbreaker. He was facing forward, back toward me, like he was just staring into the dark. I paused, watching, and then, without any normal shift in posture, no casual turn, no, oh, someone's up there, he rotated around and looked straight at me. And he raised his hand and started waving. Not like a quick, hey mate, wave either. More like a slow, repetitive wave, while his body stayed perfectly still. That's when my stomach tightened, because the more I stared, the more details didn't make sense. He was in a white overall. The problem was, our company-issued coveralls were dark blue with reflective strips. Nobody wore white. Not officers, not ratings, nobody. And his helmet was bright yellow. Again, possible in theory, but everyone on board had standard white helmets. The whole thing felt like someone had dressed wrong on purpose. And there was another thing that bothered me. From where he was standing, it shouldn't have been easy for him to see me. The bridge lights were dimmed inside, and with the angle and reflections on the glass, you normally can't look up and clearly make out a person moving around on the bridge unless the lighting is just right. But he was tracking me. Like, as I walked away from the starboard side toward port, his head turned, keeping me in view. The wave kept going, slow, consistent. I told myself, all right, radio him. This is probably a tired deckhand messing around. So I went to the console, grabbed the handheld radio, and called out, "Starboard deck, this is Bridge. Identify yourself." Nothing. I called again, more firm this time. Still nothing. Just faint static and that empty radio silence you get in the middle of the ocean. And the whole time, through the glass, he just kept waving, watching me. Not moving his feet, not shifting his weight, just waving like a mannequin that had learned one motion. At that point, I didn't even feel curious anymore. I felt uneasy. That prickling feeling you get at the back of your neck when something is wrong and your brain can't quite explain why. So I went to the light panel and switched on the bridge spotlights, the big ones that wash the deck in bright white. The deck flooded with light. I looked up immediately, expecting to catch him mid-prank, squinting, maybe laughing, maybe running. But he was gone. Just gone. No footsteps, no scramble, no, oh crap, nothing. For a few seconds I stood there staring, trying to force logic into it. My first thought was he ducked into the stairway near the paint locker, or slipped into the forward passage by the windbreaker. So I kept the lights on and watched. 10 minutes, 15, 20, nothing. The next morning, I asked around, casually at first. "Hey, was anyone out on deck around 1:30 last night?" Everyone looked genuinely confused. One guy laughed and said, "Mate, I was dead asleep." Another swore he hadn't even gotten up to use the bathroom. Nobody admitted to it. Nobody even hinted like they were hiding a joke. And the thing is, if it was a prank, I wouldn't have been angry. I would have respected it, honestly. It would have been a good one. But the reactions I got didn't feel like guys trying to keep a secret. They felt like guys who had no clue what I was talking about. Later, I checked the area where he'd been standing. The paint locker access was locked like it always was at night. The forward store entrance was secured, and there wasn't anywhere obvious someone could have hidden and then vanished from in the 2 seconds it took me to turn on those lights. What sticks with me most isn't even the outfit. It's the way he moved, or didn't move. The stiffness, the staring, the slow wave without any warmth in it. Like he wasn't greeting me, like he was just repeating a motion he knew I'd recognize. I've sailed for years, crossed plenty of ocean in the dark, dealt with real emergencies, real fear. And I've never had another moment like that one. I still don't have a clean explanation for what I saw. All I know is, I watched someone walk forward. I watched him turn and wave at me for several minutes. I tried to reach him on the radio, and the instant I hit those floodlights, he disappeared like he'd never been there at all. So, I live in this house where I honestly can't find much history on it at all. The only thing I do know is what my parents told me from when they first moved in. When they were doing some work on the bathroom, they found this little stash inside the wall. A human hip bone, and a bunch of filthy old magazines, like sealed up in there. No explanation, just that. And growing up here, I've always had this one thing with me. I've seen a woman, well, a spirit, I guess, since I was a kid. Long, dark hair, really pale. Around my height, maybe 5'6"-ish. I'd catch her in the hallway like she belonged there, like she was just passing through. Sometimes she'd be sitting in what used to be my old bedroom, or standing half in, half out of doorways. Never rushing, never loud. Just there. My mom has seen her too, and this part still gets me. She told me for years she thought it was me, because apparently this woman and I have the same kind of build and the same hair from a distance. Mom said she'd walk past my room late at night and see her sitting on the edge of my bed, like she was waiting for something. Or she'd catch her in her peripheral vision and think, oh, it's just her, until she'd look properly and realize I wasn't even there. This has been happening since we moved in, about 14 years now. And weirdly, I got used to her. I stopped feeling scared. If anything, she felt familiar, like an old presence that didn't mean harm. Lately, I don't even see her much at all, which I thought was a good thing. But then this new thing started happening, and it's different. It doesn't feel like her. For the last couple of weeks, I've been hearing whistling in the middle of the night, always around the same time, between 2:40 and 3:05 a.m., like clockwork. The first night it happened, I was in bed scrolling on my phone, half asleep. And suddenly I hear this clear, steady whistling, like a grown man standing outside, casually whistling to himself. Not music playing, not wind, actual whistling, controlled, intentional. My room faces the front of the house, and outside my window there's basically nothing, just a wide stretch of field and scrubby land. We've only got one neighbor, and they're off to the side. The rest is open dirt and bush for a bit before it hits anything else. So I'm lying there thinking, why would someone be out there right now? After a minute, I forced myself to look out the window. Nothing. No movement, no silhouette, no headlights, no shape in the field. Just empty darkness. And the second my face turned toward the glass, the whistling stopped. Like someone had been waiting to see if I'd look. It got so quiet it felt heavy, like the air thickened. I climbed back into bed, heart going stupid fast, trying to tell myself I was overreacting. And then it started again, only this time it sounded closer. Not out in the field, closer to the house, like it had moved while I wasn't looking. It went on for a few minutes, then stopped. And after that, it happened nearly every night at that same time. I stopped looking out the window. Not even because I was trying to be brave, more like I had this strong feeling I shouldn't. Like something in my body was warning me, don't do that. Don't acknowledge it. Don't look. I was already tense, just waiting for the whistling to start again, when I heard a loud bang on the roof. Not a creak, not settling, a bang. Then, footsteps. Actual footsteps moving across the roof, like someone was walking up there. It lasted maybe a minute, long enough for me to sit bolt upright and feel my stomach drop through the floor. When it finally went quiet, I thought, okay, it's done. Whatever that was, it's done. And then I heard footsteps outside my window, right there, at the front of the house. Like someone standing close enough that if I moved the curtain, I'd be looking straight at them. I froze so hard I felt locked in place. I'm not being dramatic. I couldn't make myself move. My whole body felt pinned. And the feeling in the room turned wrong. Not curious, not eerie, not ghost story creepy. It felt mean. Like something with bad intent had stepped into the space and wanted me to know it was there. And then my dog, Maple, walked into my room. She's usually loud, If she hears a weird noise, she barks, she growls, she tries to investigate. That's just her personality. But last night she came in silent and stiff, walked straight toward my bed, and stared at the window like she was looking at something she didn't understand. Her face looked scared. That's the only word for it. Then she jumped onto my bed and pressed herself into me, shaking a little, like she was trying to hide with me instead of protect me. And that honestly scared me more than everything else, because animals don't do that unless something feels really, really wrong. Today she's been off, quiet, watching the window from across the room, refusing to go near it. If I even move toward that side of the house, she follows me like she's trying to steer me away. And I just don't know what this is. The woman I used to see, she never felt like this. She felt familiar, almost sad if anything. But this whistling thing, the roof, the footsteps, the way my body reacted, it feels like something else entirely. I'm the kind of person who picks up on energy really easily. I can feel when a space changes, when something walks into a room, when the air shifts. So part of me wonders if that's why it's happening to me and not everyone else. Like maybe I'm the only one noticing, or the only one it can reach. But I don't want it here. I want to know what it is, what it wants, and how to make it stop. Because whatever this is, it doesn't feel like it belongs in my home. Okay, let me just tell you this the way it happened, because even thinking about it still makes my stomach clench. So, it's late, and I'm in the back seat with my brothers, Eli and Mason, and our mom, Renee, is driving. We're heading to my grandma's place because she hasn't answered her phone all day. Like, not texts, not calls, nothing. And normally she's the kind of person who calls you back too fast. So, yeah, people were getting worried. We turn onto her street, and at first it's just quiet, normal quiet. But the closer we get, the more something feels off, like the air inside the car changes. Then Mom pulls into the driveway, and immediately, I notice the porch. My grandma always has this weird little habit. She sits out front and cracks nuts like it's her job. There are always shells. It's practically her signature. The porch is usually a crunchy minefield of broken shells. But this time, nothing. Clean. Like someone swept it spotless. Then I look up at the windows. Grandma always keeps a lamp on after dark, always. Even if she's asleep, there's usually some warm glow behind the blinds. This house was pitch black. Not a single slice of light. And I swear to you, the second we stopped the car, this sudden dread just hit me, like it rose up out of nowhere and settled in my gut. My mouth tasted sour, like when you're about to throw up from nerves. Mom turns the radio down real slow and goes, "Stay in the car." And I'm thinking, oh, don't worry, I wasn't planning on stepping foot in there anyway. She walks up to the porch and tries the screen door. Locked. Okay, fine. Maybe she just latched it. Mom knocks on the inner door, like a firm police knock. And I'm not exaggerating. The door opens way too fast. Like someone was already standing there, hand on the knob, waiting for that exact knock. Instant chills. Full body chills. My grandma, well, grandma, I guess, stands there in the dark and she looks taller. Not by a little either, like she'd gained inches. Her posture was straighter. Her shape looked different, and her face, something about it felt unfamiliar, even though it was her. Mom steps inside, and the door shuts behind her. And the dread in my stomach gets worse, like it levels up, like my body is screaming, "Nope, no, something is wrong." I look at Eli, and he looks at me, and we don't even have to talk. We're both getting that same ice-cold, "this is bad" feeling. That house didn't feel sick. It didn't feel empty. It felt mean. like the whole place was watching us. A few minutes pass, way too long, and I'm sitting there thinking, please come back out. Please, just come back out. Then Mom bursts out of the house like she's escaping something. She doesn't stroll, she storms. She yanks the car door open, gets in, and starts driving before she even fully shuts it. For the first minute or two, she's silent. Her jaw is tight. Her hands are clenched on the wheel. We think she's mad, like maybe Grandma said something rude, or she found something upsetting. Then she starts crying. Not like a sniffle, like breaking. And now we're panicking, asking what happened, what she saw, what's going on. She keeps shaking her head and goes, "That wasn't right. That wasn't right." And then she tells us. No lights were on inside. None. Not one lamp. Not a TV glow. Nothing. But Grandma moved through the house like she could see perfectly. And the smell. This is where Mom's voice got quieter, like she didn't even want to say it out loud. Grandma has cats. 3 of them. There's always cat smell, litter box smell, that sharp, sour ammonia stink that hits you the moment you walk in. Mom said there was none of that. Instead, the whole house smelled like flowers, like lilies and lilacs, and this soft lavender smell underneath it. Not pleasant either, not cozy, too strong, too perfect, like perfume poured into the air. Mom tried to turn on a light, and when she flipped the switch, nothing happened. Because the bulbs had been taken out. Everywhere. Like somebody went room to room and unscrewed every bulb and removed it. And my grandma could not do that on her own. Not with her hips, not with her hands, not without dropping something or leaving a mess. But it was done. Quietly. Cleanly. Then Mom says Grandma stood in the middle of the living room, just standing there, hands folded neatly in front of her. In the dark. Not moving. Not reacting. And when Mom asked if she was okay, Grandma answered, "Wrong." Not in a confused dementia way, in a way that made Mom's skin crawl. She called Mom dear. My grandma never calls anyone dear. She calls you baby, sweetheart, honey. She teases. She complains. She talks like herself. But dear came out like it was rehearsed. And the closer Mom got, the heavier the room felt. Mom said it was like pressure on her chest, like someone was slowly pushing down on her lungs. The air was thick and hot and stale, like the house had been sealed shut for days. But the heater wasn't even on. And the couch, this detail still creeps me out, had been pushed flush against the heater, like someone moved it there on purpose. And the blanket on the couch was folded perfectly, like no one had touched it in forever. No cat toys, no scratching sounds, no shadows darting around. Nothing. It was like the cats had never existed. Then Mom told us the part that made my blood run cold. She leaned in to hug Grandma goodbye, and Mom is taller than my grandma. She always has been. But when she put her arms around her, Mom realized she was looking up. She was shorter. She pulled back and swears Grandma looked younger, less wrinkled, smoother skin, like someone had peeled years off her face. And the hug didn't feel like hugging family. It felt like hugging a stranger wearing a familiar body. Then there were the glass collectibles, my grandma's prized little blue glass trinkets. She used to dust them like they were museum pieces. They were all shoved into a cardboard box, smashed, like someone got angry and broke them. And the box was jammed against the wall like it was being hidden. And one more thing. This is almost absurd, but Mom was dead serious. My grandma has, barely any teeth. She's been missing them for years. No money for dentures. It's just how it is. But while Grandma talked that night, Mom said she saw a full set of teeth. A full, normal set. Like, brand new. When Mom finally backed toward the door, because at some point her body just decided we're leaving, Grandma didn't follow. She just stood there, in the darkness, watching. Not waving, not blinking much, not calling out. Just watching Mom walk away. Mom drove us home with her face wet and her hands trembling, and we all sat there in stunned silence because what do you even do with a story like that? And yeah, I know dementia can change someone. I know it can twist memory and personality and behavior. But dementia doesn't make you taller. It doesn't remove every light bulb in your house. It doesn't make you smell like a florist shop at midnight. And it sure as hell doesn't make you look younger and suddenly have a perfect set of teeth. So, I don't know what we saw that night. I just know that when we pulled into that driveway, it felt like we'd parked in front of the wrong house. Like something in there was wearing my grandma's face and wanted us to believe it. Welcome to the Paranormal M channel. Thanks for sharing your paranormal experiences with me, and don't hesitate to send in more. Can't sleep again tonight? Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. I hope the stories I'm sharing today will help you relax and get a better night's sleep. Be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the latest videos. Now, switch on your bedside lamp, snuggle under the covers, and let's dive into tonight's paranormal stories. Okay, so, I need you to picture the kind of doll that looks normal at first, but the longer you stare at it, the more you feel like it's staring back. That's the one I'm talking about. My mom, well, I'll call her Mary Ann, has had this doll since she was a kid. Like, decades. It's one of those sweet childhood keepsake things to her. To me, it's been a problem my whole life. And it's not like my mom is some total skeptic. Our house has always had weird energy. Little things, footsteps when nobody's walking, cold spots in places that don't make sense. But this isn't even about the house. This is about the doll. Because that thing feels separate, like it carries its own mood. When I was little, maybe 5 or 6, Mary Ann kept that doll in my bedroom. Apparently it was cute and special and sentimental. But I hated it. I hated it in the way kids hate things when they don't have the words for why yet. I used to turn its head away from my bed and line up my other stuffed animals facing it, like I was assigning them guard duty. I know that sounds ridiculous, but it was the only way I could sleep without feeling watched. And speaking of sleep, my bed used to shake. Not like a small vibration. I mean violent, like someone grabbed the frame with both hands and rattled it as hard as they could. I told my parents. They did the classic adult thing. It was probably a dream. The house is settling. You're imagining it. You know. Until one night I begged Mary Ann, please just sit here until I fall asleep so it stops. She finally did, sat on the edge of the bed, kind of rolling her eyes like she was humoring me. And then the bed started shaking. I still remember the way her face changed. She didn't laugh. She didn't explain it away. She jumped up like she'd been shocked, and she just stared at the mattress like it had betrayed her. And I was this tiny kid sitting there thinking, thank you. Finally, I'm not crazy. But the doll, that's where it gets worse. One night around that same age, I'm trying to fall asleep while the bed is doing its usual horror movie routine. And I swear to you, the doll's head slowly turned. Just turned. like it had been listening and decided it was time to join in. And then it moved. Not toppled over, not fell off the shelf. It crawled toward me. I started screaming so hard I couldn't breathe. And here's the part that still makes my stomach flip. It sounded like it was laughing. Not like a cute hee-hee toy sound, like a nasty little giggle that did not belong in a child's room at night. My dad, let's call him Ray, stormed in furious because he had to be up early for work and thought I was just having another kid moment. And the second he came in, the doll was still, silent, like it had flipped a switch the moment an adult walked into the room. That was the last night it stayed in my room. After that, Marianne moved it into her bedroom like the solution was just relocating it, like you do with a noisy clock. Years go by, middle school age. I come home one afternoon, backpack half off my shoulder, thinking about snacks and homework, and I walk into the living room and just freeze. The doll is sitting on the couch, and the TV is on. And what's playing? Some daytime talk show. Not even something spooky. Just one of those dramatic, here's why your life is a mess episodes, with an audience clapping at things that shouldn't be clapped for. I screamed. Like full-body instinctive scream. My uncle, Marianne's brother, I'll call him Dean, was living with us at the time. He came running from upstairs, thinking someone had broken in or I'd gotten hurt. And the second he saw the couch, he stopped short. His face went pale in that way people try to hide. Because he hated that doll too. Always had. And we were the only ones home. Marianne had left for work that morning. Dean hadn't touched it. He wouldn't even get close. When I begged him to move it, he just shook his head and said, "Nope, absolutely not." Like touching it would be signing some kind of contract. When I told Marianne later, she laughed like I was pranking her. Like I'd dragged the doll out for a joke and turned on the TV for effect. But listen, what sixth grader comes up with haunted doll watches daytime television with a remote as a bit? I wasn't a horror writer. I was a kid who wanted the thing gone. Now, jump to recently. I'm home from college for the summer. Older, tired, trying to be normal about it. I'm walking the dogs down the hallway to bring them into Marianne's room, and I glance over. The doll is on her nightstand. Like it belongs there. Like it's part of her bedtime routine. So I ask, super cautiously, "Why is that in here?" And Marianne squints at me like I'm being weird and goes, "What do you mean? You put it there." Which, no, absolutely not. And then she doubles down and says she thinks I carried it upstairs earlier while we were both home and set it up there like some kind of joke. She even says she walked in and the TV was on in her room, like the doll had been watching the news. The news. And she's looking at me like I'm the one staging this, like I'm the one creeping around the house playing doll butler. I didn't do it. I swear I didn't. And the worst part? This isn't new. I've tried to get rid of it before. I've begged her for years. Donate it, throw it away, lock it in storage, anything. I've even tried, on my own, to get it out of the house. And somehow, some way, it always comes back. Back on a shelf, back on a chair, back in a room it wasn't in before. Like it's reclaiming territory. So now I'm stuck in this place where I'm too old to be afraid of a doll, but I am afraid. Because it doesn't feel like a toy. It feels like a presence wearing a toy's face. And my mom, Marianne, she'll laugh it off and say I'm dramatic, but I can tell there's a part of her that doesn't like talking about it too long. Like if she jokes too hard, she won't have to admit what it might mean. I don't know what to do anymore. I'm not asking anyone to believe me blindly. I know what I've seen, and I know that doll does not stay where you put it. So, I've been turning this over in my head for years, and I'm just going to tell it the way it felt, because that's really the only way it makes sense. When I was a kid, my mom, her name was Renee, started dating this guy named Mark. He wasn't loud or obviously scary or anything, just his house felt off to me in a way I couldn't explain. And that's when something really weird started happening. Every time we'd go stay the night at Mark's place, I would sleepwalk. Which is wild because I'd never sleepwalked before that, not once. It started maybe a few weeks after we began staying there regularly, and it kept happening. I'd fall asleep in my room. My room was at the far end of this long hallway that led straight to the living room. And then I'd wake up on the couch like someone had moved me there. Except nobody ever said they did. And I know what you're thinking. Maybe they carried me out there and I just didn't wake up. But I was the kind of kid who popped awake if someone even tried to reposition my blanket. The part that makes my stomach twist even now is what happened next. I'd wake up on that couch, confused, and I'd try to go back to my room. But the moment I stood at the entrance to the hallway, the doors would start moving. Like, by themselves. One would creak open. Another would softly close. And it wasn't all at once. It was staggered, like something was timing it. The whole thing would last maybe half a minute, 40 seconds. Never long, but long enough to feel endless. And while those doors were shifting, there would be these shadowy shapes, different heights, different builds, moving through the doorway gaps, but also through the walls like the walls weren't even there. I didn't see faces. I didn't see eyes. Just movement that didn't belong. I'd be frozen right there at the mouth of the hallway, like my body forgot how to work. And when I finally could move again, I'd just back up and crawl onto the couch and sleep there. I refused to walk down that hallway. And somehow, I'd always wake up in my bedroom in the morning, like I'd eventually sleepwalked back on my own. That went on for about 2 years. Then it stopped, and I never sleepwalked again after that, ever. But the weirdness didn't leave with it. After that, I started seeing things in my room, and hearing voices, like someone calling my name, trying to get my attention. The timing was always the same. It would happen around 20 or 30 minutes after I'd been put to bed. Didn't matter if the adults were still awake. Didn't matter if the house was noisy or quiet. It was like, once I'd been alone in the dark long enough, it started. It got so bad that I begged to sleep with this super bright work light in my room. Not a normal lamp, like one of those harsh, blinding lights. The ceiling light didn't feel strong enough. I needed it to be bright enough to erase corners. Even then, sometimes I still couldn't see anything, but I could hear it. Eventually, my mom and Mark decided it was too expensive to keep that light running, and honestly, they weren't wrong. And one time, the bulb actually popped, exploded, so that was kind of their final straw. They took it out. About a week later, I woke up and it felt like my entire body was pinned, like something heavy was laid across me from shoulders to ankles. We had a cat and a small dog at the time, but this wasn't that. This was my whole body, like a full human weight. At first I couldn't see because it was dark and my eyes hadn't adjusted. And then they did. And there was a person on me. Not a shadow, not see-through, not ghostly. A full, solid-looking human being. Like if you turned a corner and caught a stranger in your room, and I watched this person climb off my bed, just calmly, like they weren't even in a hurry. Then they walked out through my bedroom door into the hallway. My mom didn't notice them, not even a flinch, nothing. And that's the part that really messes with me, because ever since that night, I still see that same person sometimes. Not constantly, but enough that I can't write it off as a one-time panic thing. I'll see them across a parking lot, in a grocery store aisle, behind the wheel of a car at a stoplight, just living like a normal person. They never look at me. They never acknowledge me, and nobody else reacts like they're there at all. Around that same era, I also developed this habit of talking in my sleep, sometimes laughing, sometimes full-on answering questions like I'm having a conversation. And once in a while, this sounds ridiculous, but I swear it's true. The voice that comes out doesn't sound like me. Like it'll be deeper or weirdly high, like someone using my mouth but not my voice. I know people can do strange stuff in their sleep, so I'm not saying that part is paranormal. I'm just saying it's another brick in the wall. Years later, when I was older, there was another stretch that ramped things up again. My stepdad, Derek, had a bad accident and messed up his knees. He was stuck mostly in the basement for a long while, so we basically lived down there with him. We'd all be in the basement, me, Derek, the pets, while the rest of the house was empty. And we'd hear things upstairs, like chairs scraping, footsteps, the TV turning on, stuff that sounded so normal that your brain automatically goes, "Oh, someone's home." Except we'd all be downstairs together, and there'd be no cars outside, no other people. The moment we'd go upstairs to check, it would stop. Every time. Like it didn't want to be caught. Not long after that, I started having these insanely vivid dreams. And they weren't random dreams. They were always something hurting me, like the dream had a purpose. And then I'd wake up with injuries where the dream said I got hurt. Scratches, bruises, sometimes in patterns that made no sense. One of the worst examples, I had a dream where I got shot. In the dream, it went straight through me, like in one side and out the other. And when I woke up, I had bruises on both sides of my body, lined up like a path, like something had traveled through. And I had no explanation for how I could have gotten them. I still get dreams like that sometimes, and I still wake up marked up sometimes. Then, the biggest real-life thing happened. In 2020, my mom, Renee, died from heart issues. And Derek swears that around the same time, right around it, he suddenly got heart palpitations out of nowhere. And then the hospital called him just minutes later saying they tried, but they couldn't save her. Like his body knew before his phone did. After she passed, I started hearing guitar music sometimes, just faintly. My mom played guitar a lot when I was growing up. It wasn't constant, and it wasn't like a full song blasting in the house, just little pieces, like someone remembering how to play. Derek started having his own experiences too, but not always at the same time I would. And he got really into protective stuff, crystals, smoke cleansing, that kind of thing. I wasn't really invested in that world, but he started doing it regularly, like he was trying to reset the atmosphere. And weirdly, it helped. A lot of the activity faded after that. Now it's mostly just two things. One, I still have those hyper-real dreams and sometimes wake up with scratches. Two, my closet door ends up open basically every night, even though I swear I close it every night. And it's not like there's anyone hiding in there. It's empty, and it's way too small for anything like that. And that's kind of why I'm telling you all of this. Because I don't know what category to put myself in anymore. Part of me believes the paranormal is real. Part of me thinks my fear of the dark is so intense that maybe my brain fills in blanks with monsters. And I don't want to be the person who's just paranoid and feeding myself a story. But at the same time, sleepwalking that only happened in one house, the hallway doors, the figures, that person on my bed that nobody else could see, the bruises after those dreams. It's hard to shrug it off like it's nothing. So I guess what I'm asking is, am I just scaring myself? Or has something actually been happening around me this whole time? Hey, so I've never really told this story out loud without feeling a little silly, but something genuinely strange happened to us, and I still can't explain it. At the time, my partner Camille and I were living in France. We were in our early 30s, pretty grounded, not the kind of people who go looking for paranormal stuff. In late 2021, we moved into this apartment in Saint-Étienne-du-Rouvray, not far from Rouen. Honestly, on paper it was perfect. Quiet building, great insulation, warm, clean, the kind of place you'd expect to feel immediately like home. But it didn't. Nothing bad at first, just this subtle feeling, like we were renting space in someone else's life. Like we couldn't fully settle, no matter how much we tried. Then, about a month in, we sold our old bed frame and ordered a new one. The delivery got delayed, so for about a week, we slept with the mattress on the floor. And that's when the weirdness started. The first thing that happened was small, but it hit us in this unsettling way. Camille went downstairs to take out the trash. It was one of those quick trips, so she didn't lock the door behind her. I was still upstairs, stretched out on the couch watching TV, not moving, not even getting up. A minute later, she came back up, and the door was locked. Like, properly locked. She tried again, thinking maybe she'd made a mistake, but no. The key turned, that stiff little click you feel when a door is definitely locked. I opened it from inside, and we both just stood there, staring at each other like, okay, how? We tried to laugh it off. Maybe the lock was weird. Maybe it caught on its own. Whatever. But then that evening, right before bed, we noticed the light bulbs in the bedroom lamps were loose, like someone had started unscrewing them. Not fallen out, not broken, just loosened enough to flicker and fail. We figured it was just from moving furniture around, so I screwed them back in, tight. The next morning, loose again. Not just one, multiple bulbs. And then we noticed extension cords were unplugged, like cleanly pulled out. Anyone who's ever used one knows, they don't just slip out on their own. You have to pull. So again, we plugged everything back in. We checked the sockets. We checked if the cords were under tension or bent in some weird way. Nothing. A couple hours later, same thing. Unplugged. Bulbs loosened again. That's when we stopped trying to rationalize it and decided to test it. We set my phone up to film the corner of the room, angled toward one of the lamps, just to prove to ourselves it was nothing. It didn't make sense. After that, it was like the room started playing tricks. Books that had been neatly stacked would be on the floor. Small things weren't where we left them. Not dramatic, not like a movie, but enough to make you doubt yourself constantly and then realize, no, you're not imagining it. We lasted maybe another week. We weren't eating properly, we were tense all the time, and the apartment felt heavier every day. So we made the decision to leave. And here's the part that still gives me chills. When we came back later to clean and do the final inventory, we walked into what had been the bedroom, and it was noticeably colder than the rest of the apartment. Not a little drafty, like stepping into a different temperature zone. Even the person doing the inventory, someone totally neutral who didn't know anything about our experience, paused and said something like, "That's strange. This room is really cold." Camille and I just looked at each other because neither of us had said a word. We moved out. New place, new start. And since then, nothing. Not a single weird sound. No bulbs unscrewed, no cords unplugged, no crashing mirrors. Just normal life. I don't know what it was. I'm not claiming I know. But I do know this. Whatever happened in that apartment wasn't normal, and I'm still grateful we left when we did. So, I grew up in this quiet little place called Mapleton, just outside a bigger town people actually recognized. Typical kind of neighborhood. Nothing dramatic on the surface. Our house wasn't some creaky old Victorian with secret passages, and it wasn't shiny and new either. I'm pretty sure it went up sometime in the late 80s or early 90s. Just normal. But what happened inside it never felt normal. One of the memories that stuck to me like a burr, like I can still feel it in my chest when I think about it, is waking up one night and my bedroom was glowing. Not warm light, not street light leaking in. This was this weird, intense blue, like the whole air in the room had turned electric. I couldn't tell you my exact age. Somewhere around 5, maybe a little younger. My room was upstairs, facing our fenced backyard, and beyond that was this stretch of trees, more like a scruffy little forest to a kid. And I remember being in bed, blinking, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. And there were 3 figures in my room. The best way I can describe them is, they didn't look fully real. Like they were there, but also kind of flat. Like silhouettes that forgot how to be 3-dimensional. Hazy around the edges. Not quite shadows, not quite people. I remember them moving closer to my bed. And then, nothing. That's where it cuts off. Like someone just snipped the tape. Here's the thing that messes with me. For the first 10 years of my life, I was absolutely, completely terrified of anything even vaguely alien. And I mean terror. If I saw a picture of one of those stereotypical gray faces, big eyes, small mouth, I'd freeze. Full panic. Sometimes it got so bad I'd end up humiliating myself as a kid. And the strangest part was, nobody had shown me anything. It wasn't like I was watching sci-fi movies or being fed spooky stories. It was just there, like a fear installed in me. I'm in my mid-20s now, and the older I get, the more that blue light memory starts to feel less like a dream and more like something I'm not supposed to remember. And that wasn't the only odd thing in that house. When I was really little, like toddler age, I had this habit of laughing in my sleep. Not little giggles either, proper laughter. Sometimes it would build until I'd start crying, still asleep the whole time. My arms would wriggle around like I was reaching for someone, stretching up like I was playing a game with an invisible person right above me. It freaked my parents out at first, my mom, Rachel, and my dad, Dean. They'd stand at the doorway and just watch, trying to decide if they should wake me up or pretend they hadn't seen anything. Eventually, they forced themselves to treat it like a weird kid quirk. Sleep stuff, you know? Until one night. This would have been before my little brother was born, so I must have been around 3. Mom and Dad are downstairs on the sofa watching a movie. Late, lights low, that drowsy quiet you get when the whole house is asleep. The living room sat right beside the staircase, and upstairs there was a short landing with a corridor leading to my room. Mom decides to check on me. She goes up the stairs, soft-footed, like you do when you don't want the creak to wake the kid. When she reaches the top, she can see my door isn't fully closed, just this tiny crack. And through it, with moonlight coming in from my curtain, she sees a figure standing over my bed. And there I am, like always, laughing in my sleep. She says something like, "You got back down here fast?" And Dad looks at her like she's lost it. He's like, "I haven't moved." And that's when the mood changes. You know that instant switch, when your stomach drops and your body decides before your brain does that something's wrong. They both rush upstairs, and my bedroom door is now wide open. Every light in the room is on, and my parents were the kind of people who never left lights blazing for no reason. And I'm sitting upright in bed, eyes shut, still asleep, laughing so hard tears are streaming down my face. No adult in the room, no explanation, just this awful sense that something had been there and it didn't want to be caught. Not long after all that, we moved countries. My family packed up and emigrated to Australia. New life, new schools, new everything. You'd think leaving the house would leave the weirdness behind too. But there's one more thing that happened right near the end. Something so stupidly specific it's almost funny. Except it isn't. While we were packing and movers were clearing out the place, this would have been around 2008-ish, give or take, Mum comes home and one of the workers calls her over like he's found something important. He goes, "Are these yours?" And he hands her 3 neat little piles of socks. Clean socks, pressed-looking socks, like someone had actually taken the time to stack them properly. Mum just stares at them, because for years in that house, socks had been disappearing. Not whole pairs, just one sock at a time. Always one missing. And we had this sad drawer full of lonely single socks that never found their partner again. She asks him, "Where did you get these?" And he tells her they found them stuffed right at the back of this narrow gap above the cooker, like this tiny space between the extractor unit and the ceiling. Barely enough room to fit your fingers up there. And the extractor itself was huge, wedged into this alcove. Big, heavy. The sort of thing you don't casually shift around. What made it worse was this. The top of the extractor was coated in this thick, undisturbed layer of dust, like years of it. But the socks? Not a speck. No dust. No grime. Nothing. Just 3 tidy stacks sitting like they'd been placed there yesterday, without any marks around them, without anything disturbed, and with zero sign that the unit had ever been moved. And I remember my mum standing there with these socks in her hands, genuinely speechless, because what do you even say to that? It's such a small thing, socks going missing, right? But it's the feeling of it, the sense that something in that house could take things, put things back, watch you react, and leave you with no proof except your own disbelief. And even now, years later, if I picture that upstairs room, blue light, hazy shapes, the trees beyond the fence, I still get that same tightness in my chest. Like some part of me is still 5 years old, staring into the glow, trying to remember what happened after they stepped closer. Hey, so I want to start by saying I'm telling you this fresh. Like, I got home not even 2 hours ago, and I'm still trying to shake the feeling off my skin. I'm not someone who goes looking for paranormal stuff. Honestly, I'm usually the "there's gotta be a normal explanation" person. So, my partner, Mara, and I have this thing we do. Late night hikes. There's this huge historic park near us, mostly thick woods, a creek cutting through it, and it sprawls so far it actually bumps up against multiple state lines. There's even a trail where you can cross through all of them if you really want to. We've been out there so many times I could walk parts of it with my eyes closed, and it's never once felt weird. Not once. We usually park by this old little church, and right next to it, there's a Revolutionary War cemetery. It's kind of locally famous because of this one grave people call the ticking tomb. I've wandered the whole park, day, night, fog, snow, everything. It's familiar. Safe, even. But tonight was different from the moment we turned off. We left the house around 10:30-ish, kind of on a whim. And instead of taking the normal paved access road like we usually do, I decided to go down this narrower, dirt and gravel road that cuts through the woods. I don't even know why. It just felt like, yeah, let's do that. About halfway down, we rounded a bend and something shot across the road in front of the headlights. When I say something, I mean it, because I still can't neatly call it anything. It was big. Bigger than any fox or deer-sized thing I've ever seen out there. Not quite human-sized, but somewhere in that unsettling in-between. Like, too tall to be a dog, too wrong to be a person. And it didn't run like an animal either. It moved so fast it almost looked like it slid or skipped across the beam of the headlights, like a black smear. But the part that keeps replaying in my head? The eyes. They were this bright, metallic silver, like a reflection, but stronger. Too strong. Mara saw it too. I could tell by the way she went quiet. And I'm a skeptic, right? So I immediately tried to do that thing where your brain scrambles for something normal. Big stray dog, weird deer at a weird angle, optical illusion, anything. Neither of us wanted to sit with it, so we didn't. We just kept going. Pulled into the usual spot, got out, acted normal on purpose. And as soon as we stepped onto the trail, I noticed the noise. The frogs and cicadas were screaming. I don't mean, oh, nature is loud. I mean, it was like we had walked into a wall of sound. The kind where you have to talk over it, even though you're just standing in the dark. It felt almost aggressive, like the woods were buzzing on high alert. We started walking our normal loop, short, familiar, maybe half a mile total, and we were talking, but it was that forced kind of talking. Like when you can feel the mood dipping and you're trying to keep it afloat with little jokes and random conversation. And this part freaks me out, because I didn't know it until later. Apparently, a little ways in, maybe 100 meters, Mara started hearing what she thought were faraway voices. Not clear words, just that distant human murmur you'd expect from a group way off. Only, that didn't make sense. It was late, the park was empty, and we weren't near any buildings or roads close enough for that. Meanwhile, I noticed something else. The cicadas started getting quieter. Not all at once, just gradually, like someone was turning a dial down as we walked. It was like, imagine a megaphone glitching, or a microphone cutting in and out. Not right next to us, far away, but it sliced straight through my head like it didn't need distance to reach us. It made my stomach drop instantly. I stopped so fast my shoes scuffed dirt. I looked at Mara and went, "Did you hear that?" And she just stared at me like she'd been waiting for me to say it. Like she'd been trying to convince herself she was imagining everything up until that exact second. There wasn't even a discussion. We both turned around at the same time. We didn't run. We walked fast, like really fast. And I remember thinking very clearly, don't run. Running makes you pray. I know how dramatic that sounds, but that's genuinely where my brain went. The whole walk back felt wrong. Like the woods behind us were too close. Like something was keeping pace just out of sight, not crashing through brush or snapping branches. Just there, matching us in this quiet way that made it worse. The trail felt longer than it ever has, like it stretched. When we finally got into the car and shut the doors, I expected my body to relax. It didn't. I started driving, but the urgency stayed, like it had seeped into the air inside the car with us. We got down the main road, approaching our first turn, and suddenly I felt completely disoriented, like I'd been dropped into a place that looked familiar but wasn't clicking in my head. And right then Mara goes, "Do you know where we are?" And I swear to you, my first thought was, no, I don't. We've driven that road more times than I can count, but for a few seconds it was like my brain had wiped the map clean. I made a snap decision and turned right, and thank God it was the correct turn, because I don't even want to think about what it would have meant if I'd chosen wrong. That road runs along the edge of the park, kind of parallel to the trail we'd been on. And suddenly there was fog everywhere. Thick, hanging fog that absolutely was not there when we drove in. We'd only been at the park maybe 20 minutes. That's what messes with me. Not enough time for conditions to flip that hard. And then, right as we passed the area where we'd turned around, something darted across the road again. Same shape, same speed, but closer. Close enough that I saw the outline a little better, and it made my skin go cold because it looked like it had either ears that were too tall or, God, horns. And those silver eyes flashed again, bright like coins catching light. It didn't run like it was scared of the car. It ran like it was just moving through. And the second time I saw it, something happened to me physically. I can't explain it in a clean, logical way, but it was immediate. This burning pressure in my sinuses, my eyes watering, and this tingling deep in the back of my skull, like a strange static crawling under my skin. And I think, this is the part that's hard to admit, I think it started because the second time, I couldn't logic it away anymore. I couldn't pretend it was just a deer or a dog or my imagination. I had to acknowledge that I didn't have an explanation. And I hate that. I've always been the person who needs things to make sense. Even fear. I can handle fear if I can label it. But whatever we saw tonight, I can't label it. So, yeah, that's what happened. And I'm telling you because I needed to say it out loud to someone who wasn't there, just to make sure it's real, because it still doesn't feel real. So, this all really started back in early spring, late March, I think, when the woods were still kind of bare and see-through. No leaves yet, just black branches and that damp, thawing earth smell. My housemate, Mira, poked her head into my room one night and was like, "Hey, come outside, the sky is unreal." And normally I'd say no, because it was past midnight and I love my bed, but something about her tone made me grab a hoodie and follow her out. We stood in the yard, staring up at the stars for, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes. It was quiet. The kind of quiet where you can hear your own breathing. And then, out of nowhere, we hear this man singing in the woods. Not humming, not whistling, singing. Loud, like he was performing. And it made absolutely no sense because it was around 2:30 in the morning, and we're not talking about a little patch of trees behind a neighborhood. We're tucked way back, surrounded by forest. Also, it was pitch black. No flashlight beams, no headlamps, nothing. And since the trees were still bare, you could actually see farther than you normally can. If someone that close had a light, we would have spotted it instantly. We didn't debate it. We didn't investigate. We just did that thing where your bodies agree before your brains do. Turned around and went straight inside, locking the door behind us like we were in a movie. The only way I can describe the sound is, do you know Over the Garden Wall? It reminded me of that eerie, old-timey singing, like something that belongs to the woods, not a person out for a midnight stroll. Then a few weeks later, we're outside again, this time with a small fire going. We'd kind of moved on, honestly, filed it under weird, but whatever, and we hear him again. Just a handful of seconds, a little burst of song, and then nothing. And because nothing had happened the first time, we stayed out, finished the fire, and went in like normal. Trying to be casual about it, you know? Like if we acted unbothered, it would be less real. After that, it went quiet for a while. And then, early June, I had this dream that still bugs me when I think about it. In the dream, there was this little figure, like a kid, but not exactly, wearing a bright red raincoat, darting around near the pond back in the woods. And I kept trying to focus on him, trying to get a clear look at his face, but he moved too fast. Every time I almost saw him properly, he'd slip out of focus again. And the strangest part was the feeling I had in the dream, like he liked that I couldn't perceive him, like it was funny to him. And I remember getting genuinely irritated, like, stop playing with me. The next day, before I even told anyone about the dream, my partner, Caleb, comes in and goes, "Okay, so I heard the singing again. But here's the difference. It was broad daylight." He's more of the let's solve it type than I am, so he assumed it was some distant neighbor messing around. So he followed the sound into the woods. And he told me the whole thing like he still couldn't wrap his head around it. He tried to move quietly, kind of sneak up on whoever it was. And every time he got close enough that he felt like he should finally see someone, the voice shifted. Not faded, shifted. like it relocated. At one point, he said the singing was so loud it had to be right around the bend of the trail. He literally sped up and jumped around the corner, like, "Got you," and the second he did, the singing stopped. Just dead silence. And then, a few seconds later, it started again from a completely different direction, across the road, in another stretch of woods that would take 10 minutes to get to by the trail. He sprinted over there, sweating, heart pounding, determined to catch this person in the act. But when he got there, the voice was already farther away again, like it was staying just out of reach on purpose. Eventually, he came back home out of breath and frustrated, and he said something that stuck with me. It felt like it was enjoying messing with me, and I don't know why I kept chasing it. I just got mad. And that's exactly how I felt in the dream. That same weird frustration, like something was tugging at you just enough to make you react. Fast forward to August 9th, and we hear him again, just for a few seconds, like a quick sample. And it was almost like the second we recognized it, it stopped. Like it didn't want to perform once it knew we were listening with full attention. And it hasn't just been the singing. There have been these other little moments that feel off. Like a few days before that, I'm sitting at the picnic table scrolling on my phone, and I hear a neighbor in the distance calling for their dog. Totally normal. But then, on the other side of the woods, I hear this higher-pitched voice mocking him, repeating the call in this sing-songy way. Not perfectly, but close enough that my stomach dropped. And then there was the chicken thing. One night, our hens fell asleep on the porch like they owned the place, so we went out to bring them in. Each time we picked one up, it did that indignant little chicken squawk, all offended and startled. We got them all safely inside, and then, from the woods, we heard what sounded like a chicken making the same startled noise, except wrong. Like a rough imitation, like something trying to do it from memory. I'm not someone who jumps straight to, "It's paranormal." I'm really not. I've always been the skeptic in the group, and honestly, I still am. But I'm also open to the idea that there are things out there we don't understand, or maybe things we understand poorly. Maybe it's a person. Maybe it's an animal. Maybe it's something mundane with a very unsettling vibe. All I know is, since we moved here, the woods have felt like they have a sense of humor. Nothing bad has happened. No threats, no injuries, no escalations. Just this repeating feeling that something is trying to get a reaction out of us, like we're being toyed with. So at this point, our plan is painfully simple. Don't feed it. Don't chase it. Don't answer back. Just let it get bored. And I guess we'll see if it does. So there's this one thing from when I was a kid that I still remember way too clearly. And honestly, I don't have a neat explanation for it. I'm not saying it was definitely something paranormal, but it's one of those memories that sits in the back of your mind and goes, "Yeah, explain that then." I grew up on this rough little estate up in the northwest. Rows of terraces, not much money around. The kind of place where rumors travel faster than buses. People used to say the estate had been built over something from the war years, like an old temporary camp where foreign prisoners were held. Whether that's completely true or just one of those local legends, I can't swear to it, but it definitely fed the vibe. And my mom didn't exactly help with the rational explanations only mindset either. She was obsessed with paranormal shows, always had something spooky on the telly, so growing up, it felt totally normal to believe a strange noise meant a ghost had wandered through. On our street, neighbors would casually talk about a black shadow people saw slipping along the hallway or darting through rooms. Looking back, yeah, that could have been people winding each other up. But when you're little, you don't question it. You just absorb it. Anyway, the main thing happened when I was about 12. maybe 13. I'm in my mid-20s now, and I still get that tight feeling in my chest thinking about it. My parents had gone out with my little sister to some school event, singing or a play, something like that, and I'd stayed home because I didn't want to go. I remember being weirdly pleased with myself, thinking I'd get the house to myself for a bit. I was convinced I was alone. Then I heard noise downstairs. Not like the house settling, actual movement. A scrape, a shuffle. Enough to make me pause whatever I was doing and go, "Hello?" Like an idiot in a horror film. I went down to check, heart thumping, and there was nobody. Nothing out of place, no door open, no obvious reason for it. I told myself it was probably my older sister, Kira, coming in and messing about. Except, this is the part that makes my stomach drop even now. I heard footsteps upstairs. You know the difference between the sound of pipes and the sound of someone walking? This wasn't a creak. This was someone moving around above my head. So I did what I always did when I got scared. I tried to prove it to myself. I stepped out into the tiny front garden and looked up at my parents' bedroom window, because if Kira was home, she'd probably be in there. And the bedroom light was on. Just on. Bright. Clear as anything. And I remember standing there thinking, that's not possible, because I knew I'd switched it off after they left. I can still picture my hand on the light switch. I didn't half turn it. I didn't forget. I turned it off properly. So now I'm thinking, okay, she must be inside. That's the only explanation, right? So I go back in, lock the front door behind me, like that would protect me from whatever was going on, and I head upstairs, trying to act braver than I felt. I checked everywhere. Their room, the other bedroom, the bathroom, wardrobes, behind the doors. I even checked the stupid places kids check when they're terrified, like someone could be folded up behind a laundry basket. Nothing. No Kira. No one. I turned that bedroom light off again, standing there with my hand still on the switch, like I expected it to flick back on the second I let go. And then, right as I'm about to walk out, not a little clatter, a proper, violent smash. I bolted down the stairs so fast I nearly slipped, and when I got into the kitchen, I just froze. There was a plate on the floor, shattered into pieces, and every cupboard door was open. Every single one, wide open like someone had flung them in a rage. The cupboard where the plates were kept was up above the counter to the left, high enough that it wasn't like a toddler could have done it or something. And it wasn't just one door hanging ajar. It was like the kitchen had been thrown open. I didn't stand there doing detective work. I didn't count plates or inspect hinges. I couldn't. My whole body was screaming at me to leave. So I ran, straight out the front door and next door to our neighbor, Martha, and I sat in her living room shaking like a leaf, trying to explain it without sounding ridiculous. I stayed there until my family came back, maybe an hour later. When my parents got home, they did that thing parents do where they half listen, but you can tell they've already decided it's exaggeration. My dad looked annoyed more than anything. My mom was a bit quieter, like she didn't want to scare herself by taking it too seriously. They didn't exactly call a priest, put it that way. But here's the thing. I know for a fact I was alone in that house. My sister wasn't there. Later we found out she'd been at a mate's birthday. Nobody else had a key. The front door was locked. There was no sign anyone had come in or left. And sure, over the years, there were other weird little moments in those houses. Lights that seemed to switch on or off. That shadow people talked about. The odd object where you didn't remember leaving it. Most of it you can shrug off. But that night, the footsteps, the light, the crash, the cupboards all open at once. That one never fit neatly into "I imagined it." So I don't know. Maybe there's a normal explanation and I've just never found it. Maybe it was something electrical, or a neighbor pulling some kind of prank, Or the cupboards were dodgy, and the plate was balanced badly, and I connected dots that weren't connected. Or maybe it was something else. I'm not saying I believe in ghosts, not automatically. But I do think it's smart to keep an open mind, you know? Because sometimes something happens, and it leaves you with this quiet little question you can't quite get rid of. What was that? Really? So, when I was a kid, we had this yellow lab named Daisy. Total sunshine in dog form. My dad got it into his head that we should breed her. No idea why, honestly. Just one of those dad decisions that becomes a whole era of your life. She had 6 puppies, and they all went off to these wildly different, oddly perfect lives. One ended up with a family out in the country, and apparently spent her days chasing birds and napping in a barn like she owned the place. Another lived this chic little city dog life and made it to 16, which still feels unfairly impressive. And one got adopted by this couple with serious money and would sleep under the dad's desk like she was his tiny executive assistant. We kept the last puppy, the only one who came out dark brown, almost black, in this sea of blonde little lab babies. We named her Pepper, and I loved Daisy, I did, but Pepper was mine. Like, I'm not sure I'll ever have that kind of bond with a dog again. Pepper was a jittery little thing, always a bit anxious, but she was also the gentlest, most devoted creature. And I really needed that. I had a rough time as a teenager, like genuinely rough. There were days I felt so unlovable it was almost physical, like it sat on my chest. And Pepper would just refuse to let me disappear. If I shut myself in my room, she'd scratch at the door and whine until I opened it. If I curled up somewhere trying to hide, like the closet, which is dramatic, yes, but that's where my brain was, she'd find me anyway. And if I cried, she'd push her head against me, right into my ribs like, "No, I'm here. You're staying." She didn't care what kind of day I was having. She just loved me, fully, like it was the easiest thing in the world. When Daisy was 8, she got diagnosed with bone cancer. The vet laid out the options, amputation, chemo, but also said it was aggressive and likely to come back anyway. My parents decided not to put her through all of it. They chose comfort. We had a few months where Daisy had some good days, still eating, still wagging, still being herself, and then more and more bad days. Eventually, a vet came to the house, and Daisy went peacefully, right there in her own home. Pepper took it hard. She'd always been skittish, but after Daisy was gone, it was like the floor dropped out from under her. Everyone could tell. My mom, who had always been pretty strict about dogs belong on the floor, started letting Pepper up on the couch like, "Okay, rules don't matter. You're heartbroken." We all babied her for a while. She improved over time, but she was never quite the same. And then, years later, Pepper hit 9 and she started limping. I remember that moment so clearly because I think part of me knew. The vet confirmed it. Another bone cancer, and even more aggressive. The timing was brutal. Right before the holidays, right when everything is already emotional and heavy. For a little while, medication helped. There were stretches where she seemed almost normal again, still following me around, still leaning into my legs when I stood in the kitchen, still doing that thing where she'd sigh dramatically like she had a full-time job and bills to pay. And then, one morning in January, she didn't get up. She stayed curled in her bed, breathing shallowly, eyes open but far away. My parents called the vet, and I got furious. Like seeing red furious, because it was her first truly bad day. Her birthday was coming up in a week or two. I kept thinking, we can't do this now. Not now. She just needs a little more time, and I can't even describe the anger and grief. I felt like the one being who loved me without conditions had been taken away. and I didn't get a vote. I was wrecked. I was lonely. I was so mad at my parents I could barely speak to them. Now here's where it gets strange. My mom always talked about being visited by family members who'd passed. Little signs, little moments, dreams that felt different than regular dreams. And I'd had my own weird experiences before too, like a stretch in college where I swear something was haunting me. I know how that sounds, but that's the closest word for it. Anyway, about 2 weeks after Pepper died, I had this dream that felt more real than real. In the dream, I wasn't me. I was something low to the ground, running at full speed, like pure muscle and instinct, racing away from my childhood home and across these endless roads toward my college campus. I flew through the world like nothing could stop me. I tore across campus and basically launched myself up to the second floor of my dorm, and then I passed through the wall like it was mist, straight to my bed. And then, this part still makes my stomach twist. I laid down on my own sleeping body, right on my chest. And the moment I did, I felt the worst pain I've ever felt in my life. Not like a cut or a bruise, like my body was decaying from the inside, like my bones were splintering, like my ribs were going to crack open. I woke up sobbing, just immediately, like I launched out of bed, heart racing, shaking, crying so hard I couldn't breathe. And in that instant I knew it was Pepper. It felt like she'd come to find me because she could tell how destroyed I was. But she was still carrying her pain. Like, whatever comes after doesn't automatically heal you right away. Or maybe grief clings. I don't know. Still crying, I just talked to her, out loud, in my dorm room, like a person having a completely normal moment. I told her it was okay. I told her I didn't want her to hurt anymore. I told her I'd wait, that she could come back when she felt better. And then I didn't dream of her for a long time. But years later, now it happens all the time. I'll be in some random dream, something totally unrelated, and suddenly there she is. Sometimes Daisy, too. They'll show up like they've been there the whole time, like it's the most natural thing in the world. Not long ago, I dreamed I was back at my childhood home, and I walked past the front door and saw Daisy lying on the rug like she used to. And the dream just stopped. Like the whole story paused to make space for that moment. I knelt down and pet her, and she was warm and soft and exactly herself. And then, eventually, I stood up because the dream had to keep moving. And when I looked back, she was already gone. That's how it goes. They appear. They come in close for a minute. Kisses, pets, that familiar feeling. And then they disappear like they've got someplace else to be. Like they're just dropping in to remind me they're okay. And I don't know what any of it means exactly. I'm not here like, this proves the afterlife, or anything neat and tidy. It's just, it taught me something I didn't want to learn. That letting go can be an act of love, not betrayal, especially when someone you love is in pain. And that when you get the chance to love them, really love them, whether it's in real life or in a dream, you take it. You give the extra pets. So, I've been meaning to tell someone this for a long time because it still sits in my chest in this weird way. Half, that was real. Half, how do I even explain that? Back in July 2020, my family and I had to move. A bunch of reasons piled up, and we ended up renting this house in a Muslim-majority country. We're a Muslim family too, so nothing about faith or prayer was unusual in our home. But what happened in this place was something else. Before we even moved our boxes in, my parents went to check the house out properly, and in one of the built-in closets, they found a dead cat. I know, awful. But the part that made my parents go quiet was, it wasn't just dead. One of its legs looked like it had been cut cleanly, like neat. Not crushed, not mangled, not what you'd expect if a door slammed on it. My dad kept staring at it, like he was trying to convince himself there had to be a normal explanation. Then we actually moved in, and that's when we noticed something else. Almost every door had a small Quranic verse taped to it, like someone had gone room to room and made sure each doorway was covered. Naturally, we asked the landlord about it. He just smiled and said, "It's for blessings." But here's the thing. Every time we paid rent, he'd look at us and ask, in this oddly careful tone, "Everything okay? So far?" Like he wasn't making conversation, like he was checking a situation. We had a Persian cat, male, a little dramatic, honestly, and he always preferred hanging around the outer area of the house instead of inside. At first, he seemed fine, like he settled in quickly. But then, about a week in, he did this thing that made my skin crawl. For 3 days straight, he kept staring at one specific direction. He barely ate, barely drank. He'd perch up on the boundary wall and just lock onto the empty house next door. That neighboring place was abandoned, by the way. No people, no animals, no movement. Nothing. But our cat looked furious. Not curious, furious. Like he was ready to jump into a fight with something we couldn't see. And then, the dead cats started showing up. I wish I was exaggerating, but we counted around 8 or 9 in the months after we moved in. Just cats found outside, nearby, sometimes in corners where they looked like they'd simply collapsed. No obvious injuries, no hit by a car look, no blood, no signs of age. It got to the point where we were too scared to let our own cat outside because we didn't understand what was happening in that area around our home. Then something happened to me and my mom that I still can't talk about without feeling shaky. I was upstairs studying one day, and suddenly I heard my mom scream from downstairs. One of those screams that doesn't sound like surprise, it sounds like pure fear, like someone is being hurt. I ran down the stairs, heart pounding, and my mom was already running up toward me, and she screamed at me, "Are you okay?" I froze and yelled back, "Are you okay? I heard you scream." And she went pale and said, "I heard you scream." So we just stood there on the stairs, staring at each other, because somehow we'd both heard the other person screaming like they were being murdered, even though neither of us had screamed. We stood there for a long time, maybe 20 minutes, maybe longer, just trying to make our brains accept what had happened. There was no one else in the house. Nothing fell. No doors slammed. No explanation. Just that scream, 2 versions of it, like it was placed into the house. Another time, my father was asleep downstairs, and he swears someone whispered directly into his ear, "Wake up, Fareed." Not harsh, not threatening, just a young male voice, close and calm. And then there was the incident that I think scared me the most, because it felt so personal. It was winter, early 2022, and I was studying for exams around dawn. It was maybe 5:30 or 6 a.m. I was sitting on the floor near a heater, half asleep but forcing myself to focus. My mom is very religious, and she has this habit after prayer where she'll come close and blow gently on my face as a kind of blessing, like you're cooling something warm, but it's meant lovingly. So I'm studying, and I feel someone gently tuck my hair behind my ear. Then I feel that soft breath on my face, and without even thinking, I turned, smiling, ready to hug my mom. There was nobody there. Nobody. I didn't even scream. I couldn't. I just stayed frozen, like if I moved, whatever it was would realize I noticed. Not long after that, I was studying again, this time on my bed, and I felt the mattress dip right in front of me, like someone had sat down. And then the room suddenly smelled like flowers, like roses, strong and fresh. Here's the strange part. I didn't feel threatened. I felt this weird calm, like it wasn't there to hurt me. So, against every survival instinct I have, I actually spoke out loud, kind of nervously joking. And I said something like, "Look, the only truly religious person in this house is my mom. If you want to bother someone, go bother her." And I swear, I felt that presence lift, like it stood up, like it left. Nothing else happened that day. My mom, though, she had her own experiences, and I know she didn't tell me all of them. But I saw enough. Whenever she prayed, especially late at night or at dawn, she'd suddenly stop and look unsettled. She'd say she felt something rush past, or something staring, or something brushing her as she tried to focus. Like whatever was in the house didn't want her calm, didn't want her concentration, like it enjoyed interrupting. Eventually, we started doing what we knew to do: recitation, Quran, consistent prayer, seeking protection, doing it seriously, not casually. It didn't change overnight, but over time, the incidents became less frequent. And in our hearts, we came to believe the house had been inhabited by jinn, and that maybe they felt like we'd moved into a place they already claimed. There was one night I'll never forget. My mom had this loud, one-sided conversation, angry, firm, fearless. She basically told them, "If this was your home, you should have warned the owners before we came. Either live peacefully or leave, because we are not going anywhere, and we will make sure this house is protected." After that, and after a lot of spiritual cleansing, things calmed down. And now, it's almost quiet, almost normal. But even saying that out loud feels like tempting something, because the truth is, I still don't know what all of it was. I only know what it felt like to live through it. So, I've gone back and forth for years on whether I should even tell this story out loud, because it still gives me that cold, prickly feeling in my arms when I think about it. A few years back, I was driving home late after finishing up a night of deliveries. Not DoorDash this time, just a local delivery app I was doing on the side. It was one of those nights where the roads are mostly empty, and you're on autopilot, thinking about getting home and finally taking your shoes off. I'd just dropped off an order in this ridiculously fancy neighborhood. Big houses tucked back in the trees, the kind of place where the driveways are longer than some streets. What makes it creepier is how quickly that area turns into nothing but woods and old farmland. I'd grown up not far from there, maybe half an hour away, and I knew those roads well enough that I could drive them half asleep. Anyway, I turn onto this darker stretch, no streetlights, just my headlights cutting through the trees, and I catch movement ahead. At first, I'm like, deer. Totally normal. So I slow down like you do. Then my headlights fully hit it, and I slammed the brakes so hard I felt my stomach drop. Because it looked like a deer in the quick, first-second way your brain labels things to keep you moving. But once it was lit up, it was wrong. Too big. Too tall. Its back was higher than it should have been, like almost level with the hood of my SUV. And its body, I don't even know how to describe it without sounding dramatic. It looked like its skin was peeling or rotting, like it didn't sit right on the frame underneath it. Not bloody exactly, more like it was coming apart. It was hunched, not like an animal lowering itself to run, more like something trying to hold itself upright, but not quite managing. And the worst part, its back legs. From about the knees down, there was nothing that looked like proper legs. just broken-looking, bony stumps, like it had been snapped and never healed, and still somehow stood there anyway. And while I'm sitting there gripping the steering wheel, heart hammering, this heavy sense of dread rolled over me, like the air changed. Like my body knew what I was seeing before my mind could catch up. Then it turned its head toward me. And that's the moment my brain stopped trying to explain it as an injured deer. It didn't have a deer head, no muzzle, no antlers, nothing like that. It was more like a human skull, but simplified. Rounder than it should have been, almost blank, like a terrible mask. If you've ever seen a child's drawing of a face, just a circle with features placed wrong, that's the closest comparison I've got. Where the eyes should have been were these dark, empty voids. Not reflective, not animal shiny, just absence. And hanging off the top and sides was long, straight black hair, like actual human hair, not fur. It moved just slightly, like it was caught in a slow underwater current, even though the night air was still. We just stared at each other. I know people exaggerate time in moments like that, but I swear it felt like 15 or 20 seconds. Long enough that I remember thinking, if it moves, what do I even do? Long enough that I could feel my pulse in my throat. And then, it didn't run. It didn't leap away into the woods. It didn't vanish like a magic trick. It faded. Like smoke thinning out. Like fog dissolving in sunlight. It stayed in place, but it became less and less solid until it was just gone. I sat there for a second, frozen, waiting for it to reappear, waiting for something to hit the side of my car, waiting for my brain to snap back into reality and tell me I imagined it. Nothing happened. At the time, I convinced myself I'd seen something like a Wendigo. I know the stories are more spiritual than creature in the woods, and honestly, I'm not even married to that idea. I just needed a name for it, something my brain could hold. Here's the part that makes it harder to shrug off, though. I moved later, up into northeastern Pennsylvania. Different town, different roads, different everything. And I saw it again. Twice. Not in the same place either. One time was near the county line, up around that stretch where the roads get steep and the trees feel like they're leaning in. The other was on some back road I took because my GPS thought it was clever. Both were late at night. Both were in heavy woods, the kind where your headlights don't reach far and the darkness feels thick. And both times, the feeling came first. That same foreboding. Like someone quietly turning down the temperature inside my body. Goosebumps racing up my arms before my eyes even caught movement. Then, there it was. Not standing in the exact same way as the first time, but the same wrongness. The same silhouette that wanted to be an animal but didn't fit. And the same sense that it wasn't just something I happened to see. It was something that noticed me. I haven't told a lot of people because I know how it sounds. I don't drink. I don't mess with anything that would make me hallucinate. And I'm not someone who's out here hunting for spooky experiences. I'd actually love it if someone could hand me a simple explanation that makes it all make sense. But every time I drive a dark, wooded road too late at night, part of me still waits for that feeling to rise in my chest, like a warning. Because now I know what comes after it. Okay, so I've got one genuinely weird story from my entire life, and I still don't know what to do with it. A while back, my partner Julian and I took a short trip to the northeast of France, not far from the Luxembourg border, outside the bigger cities, kind of in that area where it's quieter, but you still have major roads cutting through. We were going for a trading card tournament. Yeah, the kind where you sit under bright lights all day and argue politely about rules. And we figured we'd make a little weekend of it and pop over to Luxembourg too. So we booked this Airbnb. The building itself, very late 80s, early 90s vibes. 4 floors, plain white exterior, right near a busy road, the kind where you can hear traffic constantly like a distant river that never shuts up. Nothing scary looking, just slightly tired. The hallway and stairwell felt a bit neglected, scuffed paint, that kind of thing. But the second we walked in, I noticed it. The smell. Not like garbage or anything, more like damp. Like humidity that's been living in the walls for years. The apartment itself looked clean and honestly kind of cute. Spacious, modern furniture, everything you'd expect. No visible mold, no stains, nothing obvious. But the smell was everywhere, and it was in the stairwell too, so I'm guessing the whole building had some moisture issue. And then, this is the part that makes me feel silly even saying out loud. I got that instant feeling, like we weren't alone. I remember turning to Julian and going, half joking but also not joking at all, "There's something here. This place is haunted." And he just laughs. Of course he does. Julian is very rational, there's a logical explanation for everything. And he's like, "It's the smell plus your imagination. You're psyching yourself out." And honestly, he could be right. That explanation is completely reasonable. Anyway, first night, nothing happens. No weird noises, no lights flickering, no doors creaking open by themselves, no spooky silhouettes in mirrors. We sleep fine, totally normal. The next day we do the tournament thing, come back tired, a little overstimulated, and we grab food on the way back. Some fast food burgers and fries, and we eat in front of a random show we put on for background noise. Just a very ordinary evening. Then we decide to take a bath, because the bathroom had this ridiculously big bathtub. Like the kind that makes you go, "Oh, okay, this is the feature." So Julian's doing his thing, I'm running the water, and I settle in. Bubbles, hot water, the whole cozy setup. And I still have that lingering feeling, the same one from when we first walked in. Not danger, not malicious, just presence. Like the air had an extra layer to it. And I have this impulsive thought, what if I try recording? Now, I need to be super clear. I'm not an expert. I'm not an EVP person. I don't do paranormal investigations. This isn't my hobby. I used the basic voice recorder app on my phone, nothing fancy, and the water was running the whole time, which means there's constant white noise in the background. That matters, because white noise can make your brain find patterns that aren't really there. Still, I decided to try. So I record 2 short clips while I ask a couple questions out loud. And later, when I listen back, there are 2 moments that made my stomach drop a little. They're not loud. They're not crisp. They're the kind of thing you might miss completely unless you listen closely. Like headphones on, leaning in, replaying it, the whole deal. And around the 10 to 12 second mark, I swear I hear a voice say, "Matthew." Not shouted, not dramatic, just there. Like a quick answer slipped into the noise. And I remember pausing it and going, "Wait, did you hear that?" Even though I was alone listening, which sounds ridiculous, but that's exactly what happened. Then the second clip is the one that bothered me more. Because in that one, I ask something like, "Do you want me to stop asking questions?" Again, nothing aggressive, just testing the air. And around the mid to late part of the clip, I hear what sounds like, "Je te sauve." Which, yeah, that means, "I'm watching you." And that one made my skin prickle, because even if it's just my brain stitching sounds together, the idea of it is so creepy. Like, of all the things my brain could invent out of running water, why that? So now I'm stuck in this place where I feel 2 things at once. On one hand, I genuinely think it could be auditory pareidolia. White noise, tired brain, weird-smelling building, suggestion, all of it. That's probably the sensible answer. On the other hand, it's the only time in my life I've ever had that immediate "something is here" feeling. And it's also the only time I've ever listened back to a recording and felt that little cold drop in my chest. So I don't know. I'm not claiming anything. I'm not saying this was definitely paranormal. I'm just saying it happened, it felt strange, and I'm curious what you think, especially if you've ever had your brain play tricks on you with sound. And yeah, if you ever listen to stuff like this, do yourself a favor. Use headphones, and don't crank the volume before the first few seconds. Because I learned that lesson the hard way. Hey, can I tell you something that still catches in my throat when I say it out loud? So, I'm originally from Asia, and I've been working in the US for a while now. Between school, visas, and everything that happened with COVID, I haven't made it back home since 2019. And honestly, the hardest part isn't even the distance. It's what that distance keeps you from. I've missed birthdays, quiet dinners, tiny, everyday moments. And I've missed my dog more than I can explain. Her name was Miso, this little warm soul who always somehow knew when I needed her. I kept telling myself, just get through this last stretch, wrap things up here. Next year, you'll finally go home. That plan was like a light I kept walking toward. Then a few days ago, I was driving home after a brutal 11-hour night shift. You know that kind of tired where your bones feel loud? I was doing what I always do after nights like that. Windows up, volume way too high, blasting pop and rap to keep myself from drifting. And out of nowhere, like someone gently tapped my forehead, a melody popped into my head. Not a song I'd been listening to recently, not something trending, nothing. Just this soft little tune I hadn't thought about in years. It felt oddly specific, like it arrived with purpose. When I got home, I couldn't let it go. I sat there half out of my shoes, still in work clothes, scrolling and humming like a maniac, typing random guesses into search bars. It took forever, but I finally found it. I'll Be There by the Escape Club. Such a low-key 80s track. One of those songs you forget exists until it suddenly feels like it's been waiting for you. I remember thinking, that's weird. But I played it anyway. And I don't know. Something about it calmed me down. Like my chest finally unclenched. I let it loop once or twice, and then I passed out. When I woke up later that afternoon, my phone had a message from my dad. Dad's name is June, back home. And the second I saw it, something inside me just tightened. He told me Miso had passed away overnight. There's about a 13-hour time difference between where I am and home, and when I did the math, when I realized the time she must have slipped away, it lined up almost exactly with when that old melody dropped into my mind on the drive. Like, right around then. And listen, I'm not even saying I know what that means. I'm not trying to make it into some dramatic movie moment. I just know what it felt like. It felt like a goodbye that found me before the news did. Like some small thread still connected us for one last second, across an ocean and 2 lives. I cried so hard I couldn't breathe right. The kind of crying where you're embarrassed even though no one's watching. Because once the puzzle pieces clicked together, it didn't just feel like I lost her. It felt like I missed her. Like I wasn't there for the moment that mattered most, and my heart didn't know where to put that regret. And the part that really broke me was remembering this one line from the song. Just think of me, and I'll be there. I keep replaying everything. Her paws tapping the floor, the way she'd lean her whole body into me like I was her favorite place, the little sigh she'd do when she finally settled down. And I keep thinking, maybe love doesn't disappear just because you weren't in the same room. Maybe some part of it stays close, even when you're far, even when it's over. I don't know. I just miss her. And I needed to say it to someone, out loud, like this, because carrying it alone makes it feel heavier. Hey, thanks for listening. Let me set the scene properly, because this one still sits oddly in my chest. I'm Ria, and I've been a nurse for just over 20 years now. I've seen most things you can throw at a person in that job. Sadness, miracles, chaos, the whole messy spectrum. And I've always had a curiosity about the strange side of life, but honestly, nursing is what made me start taking the paranormal seriously. Not because I wanted to, more like because I couldn't keep dismissing what I was seeing and hearing. Anyway, this happened a little over a year ago, on one of those gray, drizzly summer days you only really get in the UK, where the sky looks like it's been rubbed out with a dirty eraser. I was out in the community mentoring a final year student nurse. I'll call her Tanya. She was a mature student, proper, steady presence, kind, switched on, great with patience. The sort of person you trust in a room. We had a visit to a patient, let's call her Eileen, who had a lot going on. Obs needed doing. Bloods, wound dressings. One of those visits where you've got a list before you even walk through the door. Eileen lived in an older semi on the edge of a small town. Not falling down old, just the kind of house that's been there long enough to have stories soaked into the wallpaper. Because we needed a fair bit of kit, I parked up and told Tanya to head in first, introduce herself, and start the initial assessment. Final year students get more autonomy, and she was absolutely capable. I grabbed everything from the car: BP machine, SATS probe, blood bottles, dressing packs, the usual circus. Locked up, walked through the small front garden, knocked, and then stepped inside. And here's the layout, because it matters. You walk in, and there's this narrow hallway straight ahead leading to an interior door at the back. Stairs immediately on the left. And on the right, an open doorway into the living room with a bay window at the front. I remember saying, "Hello?" as I came in, and my eyes naturally flicked right into the living room. And that's when I saw her. An older woman, about 5'2"-ish, short white hair in a neat perm. She was wearing a brown pleated skirt, little dark flat shoes, and a pale blouse, cream or white, something like that. I didn't get a look at her face because she had her back to me, moving away, like she was just calmly walking deeper into the room. She was close, 3 or 4 feet away tops. And here's the part that still makes my skin prickle. She wasn't see-through. She wasn't misty. She wasn't a shadow. She looked completely solid, like any living person I'd ever seen in a patient's home. Just an ordinary elderly woman, mid-step, minding her own business. Before I could properly process it, I heard Tanya call me from behind the interior door at the end of the hallway. So I walked down, opened it, and there she was in the kitchen area with Eileen, already chatting away, doing exactly what I'd asked. We got on with the visit. Obs done, bloods taken, dressings sorted. It took around 25 minutes, maybe half an hour. Normal enough, busy but fine. Then as we were wrapping up, I casually said to Eileen, "Oh, who's the lady in your living room?" And she looked genuinely confused and went, "Lady? What lady? The telly's on." I said, "No, not the telly. The woman. In the living room." And Eileen, still completely calm, said, "Love, I'm the only one here. So I told them both, hang on 2 minutes, because my brain immediately went to the most sensible explanation. Maybe a confused neighbor had wandered in. Maybe someone had slipped through the front door. I went straight to the living room. Nobody. And the TV wasn't on, not even humming in the background. And it was a tiny little thing, like one of those old small screens people refuse to replace. I checked upstairs. Nothing. No footsteps, no doors, no movement. And here's what really bothered me. With how the hallway sat, I would have seen someone leave. I would have heard the front door. There wasn't time. There wasn't space for a person to appear, wander off, and vanish without a sound. I went back, trying to sound light, and said, "Right, no one there. I must be overdue a holiday." Something like that. Eileen laughed politely. We did the goodbye thank you routine, and we left. The second we were outside, I made myself do something very deliberate. I didn't want to lead Tanya. I didn't want to plant anything in her head. So I said, "Tell me what you saw. Exactly. Don't worry about sounding silly, just describe it." And Tanya described the woman exactly as I had seen her. The height, the hair, the skirt, the shoes, the light blouse. The only detail she added was this. She said the woman was moving toward a chair and looked like she was about to sit down, like she was in the middle of a completely normal, everyday action. And just like me, Tanya never saw her face. So what do you do with that? Did we see a ghost? Was it some kind of time slip, 2 moments overlapping? Was it a person replaying a routine in a house she once lived in? I'll also say this. Even though she looked like someone from another era, the clothes didn't scream costume. They weren't dramatically old-fashioned. I've seen plenty of older women dressed similarly today. I don't know what it was. I only know that I saw a woman who wasn't there. And the student with me saw her too, without either of us prompting the other. And that's what keeps pulling me back to it. Not the fear exactly, just the unanswered what of it all. So, yeah, what do you think we witnessed? So, I've got to tell you about something that happened last weekend, because it's been sitting in my head ever since. A little backstory first. My aunt's husband, my uncle Tariq, passed away about a year ago. And in our family, when it hits that 1-year anniversary, everyone gathers at the person's home, or at the closest living relative's place. We do a short prayer, check in on each other, share food, just be together, you know? So this past Saturday, we're all at my uncle Tariq's house. My aunt Salma is there, and her 2 sons. The place is full. Cousins, elders, kids, the whole mix. At one point, my cousins head out to the cemetery to lay flowers and spend a few quiet minutes there. Everyone else stays back at the house, chatting in little pockets, making tea, moving chairs around, normal family gathering stuff. And then there's a knock at the front door. My wife, Lena, and I go to answer it. I open the door, and there's this young guy standing there, dressed really neatly. Black trousers, white shirt, tie. Like he'd come from an office or a funeral or something formal. He looks past me a little, kind of expectant, and he goes, "Is Tariq here?" And I just blink at him like, "What?" I honestly thought I misheard. I'm like, sorry? He repeats it, more certain this time. "Is this Tariq's house?" And I'm thinking, okay, yes, but why would you ask that like that? So I say, "Yeah, it is, but he's not here." He pauses and asks, "He's not home?" And something in me just drops. I don't even know why, but it felt heavy all of a sudden. So I tell him, gently, "No, he passed away." The guy's face changes, like he's trying to process it quickly, and he goes, "Today?" And I'm like, "No, a year ago today, actually." And then I add, "I'm sorry, who are you?" He swallows and says, "I used to work at a restaurant your uncle used to deliver to. I just wanted to stop by and say hello." At that point, I call my Aunt Selma over because I don't want to be the one handling it alone. She comes to the door and she's polite, but you can tell she's also confused. She asks him the same things. How did you know him? What restaurant? How long ago? When he names the place, she recognizes it immediately, and her whole expression shifts into that careful, hospitable mode people get when they're trying to do the right thing through grief. She tells him, "We're doing the prayer later. If you want to come back in the evening, you're welcome to join us and eat." He nods, says thank you, quiet, respectful, and then he just walks away. We close the door and just stand there for a second. Me, Lena, and my aunt. Not even saying much, just sharing that same look like, wasn't that strange? Not in a scary way yet, more like, what are the odds? Exactly a year later, on the exact day the whole family is together, this guy knocks asking for my uncle by name. So a little while later, my cousins come back from the cemetery. I tell them what happened. One of them, my cousin Adam, frowns immediately and goes, "Did you recognize him?" We're like, "No, none of us." And Adam goes, "Wait, we've got the doorbell camera." They have one of those motion recording doorbells that catches basically everything. People walking by, deliveries, cars pulling up, all that. So he pulls it up and starts scrolling. The footage shows me stepping outside earlier for a quick smoke, then coming back in. Totally normal. Then it jumps, straight to my cousins arriving home from the cemetery. That's it. No clip of the knock, no clip of the conversation. Nothing. We're all standing there looking at the screen like, no, rewind, that can't be right. So Adam goes through it slowly, frame by frame, checking the motion events, checking the timeline, everything. And there is a moment where, across the street, you can see a figure in a white shirt, like, far away, mid-road. You can see him moving toward the house. And then, right as he gets close enough that the camera should clearly catch him, the recording just stops. Like it cuts out at the exact moment he would have reached the door. And the next thing it shows is later, like that whole visit never happened. What makes it even weirder is the doorbell kept recording everything else normally before and after. People walking past, family coming and going, random motion, no problem. It just missed that. And there's this other detail that keeps bothering me. There were around 20 people in the house. But somehow, it was only me, my wife Lena, and my Aunt Salma who saw him. Nobody else wandered into the hallway. Nobody else caught a glimpse through a doorway. Nobody else heard the knock and came over like they usually do when there's unexpected company. It was like the moment happened in this tiny little bubble at the front door, just the three of us. And then it closed, and the rest of the house kept going like nothing. And I'm not saying I know what it means. I'm not even claiming it was something paranormal. But I will tell you this, all three of us saw him. All three of us spoke to him. He was real enough to answer questions, real enough to accept an invitation, real enough to walk away down the street. And yet, on the one day it would have felt symbolic, the camera doesn't catch him. And nobody else in a packed house sees him. So yeah, that's been living in my head. Because I keep coming back to the same thought, soft but persistent. Out of all the days for a stranger to knock and ask for someone who's gone, why that day? And why like that? Okay, so I'm gonna tell you this the way I'd tell it if we were sitting together, because it still gives me chills even saying it out loud. And just so you know, my family's had stuff like this happen for as long as anyone can remember, way before I was even born. I'm not some polished storyteller, but these moments are burned into our family like snapshots you can't unsee. Back in the early 90s, my great-grandma Marisol, she was from Puerto Rico, and my great-grandpa Enzo, who came from Italy, finally bought a house in Bridgeport, Connecticut. It was a big deal for them. One of those, we finally did it moments, you know? They meet the seller, do all the paperwork, and then it's time to hand over the keys. And here's the part my family always repeats the exact same way because it was so strange. The seller puts the keys in my great-grandpa's hand, looks both of them straight in the eyes, no smile, no warmth, nothing, and says, real calmly, "Good luck." Not congrats, not take care of her, just good luck. Marisol didn't like that. She said her stomach dropped right there on the porch. But Enzo, he wasn't into paranormal stuff at all. He brushed it off like, people say weird things, it's fine. So they walk inside with my little uncle, well, my mom's brother Nico, and he's about 5 at the time, just a little kid bouncing off the walls, sprinting from room to room like kids do when a place feels like a new playground. Within minutes, Nico runs into the bathroom, and then comes flying right back out. He goes straight to Marisol, all serious, wide-eyed, and says, "There's a man in there, but he doesn't have a face." Now you can tell a kid they've got an imagination, sure. People love to say that. But the way my family describes it, he wasn't giggling. He wasn't trying to scare anyone. He was shaken. Marisol's first thought was, maybe the seller came back in to use the bathroom. But it didn't make sense. They'd literally watched him leave. The front door never opened. No footsteps. Nothing. And they never figured out who or what Nico saw in that bathroom. But from that day on, Marisol always said the house felt wrong, like it was waiting. Years go by. Everybody's older. Nico grows up. Life keeps moving. And even with all that uneasiness, the family is still tied to that house for a while. My great-grandparents are there, and later my grandma Elena ends up living there too. Elena got pregnant with my mom, and that's when things got worse. One day she's napping, just resting like pregnant women do, and she swears she felt hands grab her by the ankles and yank, like pulled hard enough that she slid halfway off the bed. She woke up screaming, completely panicked, and she ran into Marisol's room and climbed into bed with her like she was a child. And listen, Elena was in her 20s, a grown woman. You don't do that unless you're genuinely terrified. Then comes the part that makes my chest tighten every time I think about it. A few months later, Elena's exhausted. Pregnancy exhaustion where your bones feel heavy. And she goes upstairs to lie down in her room early in the evening. And this detail has always stuck because my family treats it like fate. It was a Thursday, and Thursdays were a routine in that family. Like clockwork, my great-grandparents would go to my great-aunt's place for coffee and sandwiches. Same time, same visit, every week. But that Thursday, for the first time in forever, they randomly decided not to go. So they're downstairs instead, sitting in the living room watching the news. Elena's upstairs asleep. They didn't even hesitate. They bolted up the stairs because Elena was up there. And when they reached her room, the ceiling was on fire. Not a little flame. Not a candle-sized flicker. My family describes it like the whole ceiling was roaring, like it had been burning for long enough that it should have already collapsed. And Elena was still in bed, completely asleep, with the fire directly above her like it was hanging there ready to drop. The smoke had already hit her. She was barely responsive. My great-grandparents dragged her out, literally pulled her out of the room, down the stairs, out of the house. By the time the firefighters came, they were saying the same thing over and over. It didn't make sense. No obvious electrical issue, no clear source, no explanation for why that room caught fire the way it did. And here's what my family always says, every time. If my great-grandparents had gone for coffee like they usually did, Elena would have died in that room, and my mom wouldn't have been born, and I wouldn't be here telling you this. After that, my family basically cut ties with the place. They didn't talk about it like we moved. They talked about it like they escaped. And that moment with the keys, when the seller said, "Good luck," that stopped feeling like a weird comment and started feeling like a warning. Like he knew. Like he'd been waiting for someone else to take the house. And whatever came with it. So there's this old belief in central Switzerland, especially up in the quieter alpine valleys where the mountains feel a little too close at night. People talk about strange lights they call arme Seele, which basically means poor souls. And the way locals describe them, it isn't like a scary ghost story where something jumps out at you. It's more like this soft, heavy kind of dread, like you've wandered into someone else's sorrow. The poor souls, they say, are spirits of people who never found rest. Lost hikers, people who died alone, old folks who passed without proper prayers, sometimes even children or soldiers from wars so far back no one remembers the names. The idea is that they're still here because something was unfinished. No burial rite, no blessing, no goodbye. And they don't usually show up as shapes or faces. They show up as lights, glowing, floating points in the dark. Here's the part that always gets me. They're not aggressive. They don't rush at you or attack. They just follow. You'll see them in the distance, and you get that feeling, like you're being watched, like you're being sized up by something patient. And if you keep walking, the lights keep pace from far away. If you stop, they stop too, like they're mirroring you. Some people swear the safest thing is not to stare directly at them and to quietly pray, like the Vater Unser, because you're not trying to challenge them. You're not trying to invite anything in. You're just protecting yourself while showing respect. Now, this gets personal for me because my aunt, let's call her Mara, grew up in a tiny village near a remote valley where the locals had one story they'd repeat like a warning. They said that if you walk a certain path at night, you might see 3 lights across the river in the trees. Always 3. Not 2, not 4. 3. And the river matters because the lights don't cross it. They stay on the far bank, deep in the woods, like they're trapped behind an invisible line. When Mara was a teenager, she and a couple friends, Rito and Sibylla, decided they were sick of hearing about it and wanted to see for themselves. You know that teenage mix of bravery and curiosity where you're half terrified but you'll never admit it. So they went. And sure enough, the lights appeared across the river. 3 of them, just hovering between the trunks. They walked. Lights moved. They stopped. Lights stopped. They didn't get closer. They didn't drift away. Just watching, matching. Reto joked at first, trying to laugh it off, but the laughter didn't stick. Because that's the thing. Your body reacts before your brain can explain anything. Even when nothing happens, you feel like something is happening to you. They eventually turned back, quickened their pace, and made it home, acting like they were fine. But when they got back to the village, they ran into friends who'd been out driving around, Leonie and Pascal, and those two were like, "Wait, when did you leave? We drove past that road 3 times. Mara and her friends were like, "Yeah, we were walking. Right there." And Leonie swore, hand on heart, that they didn't see them at all. Not once. Even though the car passed the same stretch of road, same time, with headlights sweeping the shoulder. It was like Mara, Reto, and Sibylla weren't just being followed by lights. It was like the night had decided they didn't fully belong to the visible world for a while. And it isn't only lights either. That region is full of stories where things feel half human. One evening, a few locals saw a man across the river in the trees, walking slowly with a lantern. Not wandering, not panicked, just moving like he had a purpose. But the weird part is, nobody could place him. Nobody recognized him. And it wasn't the kind of place you'd casually stroll at dusk unless you really knew the terrain. He didn't look toward the village, didn't react to being watched, just kept going until the lantern glow swallowed itself deeper into the forest. Some people whispered it might have been one of the poor souls wearing a human shape for a moment, or something older than that, something that didn't need a name. And then there was this boy. People called him Nico, who had a reputation for noticing things other people didn't. The kind of kid who'd suddenly stare into an empty corner of a room and go quiet. Nico once described seeing a small, childlike figure with something wrapped around its head, like paper, like a strange hood. It came into the house, grabbed at his toys and a few pieces of clothing, and ran back out toward the woods. His family was shaken enough that they spoke to a woman known locally for helping with these things, someone who didn't treat it like a joke. She came over, led them in prayer, and after that, Nico never saw the figure again. But the most unsettling thing he ever said happened after his grandfather died in a sudden flood. His grandfather, Jonas, was swept away when his car was caught by rising water. It was fast, brutal, and the kind of death that leaves a family feeling like the world is unsafe. Afterward, every time Nico's family planned to visit his grandmother, Nico refused. Not with tantrums, just flat certainty. "I don't want to go," he kept saying. "There's a nasty man sitting on the couch." Everyone assumed he meant a visitor, or maybe he'd misunderstood something. But there was no visitor. And eventually the adults started looking at each other like, "Oh." Because Nico didn't describe a stranger, he described Jonas. Like Jonas was still there, still soaking wet in some invisible way, still sitting in the place he used to sit, except now he felt wrong, heavy, decayed in spirit. Not evil, just not at peace. No one else saw him. Only the kid. And woven through all of this is the story of a priest who lived in that region years ago. People said he took the poor souls seriously. He prayed for them by name, claimed he could quiet the lights through prayer, like he was helping them find their way. There's supposedly even a book about him, something locals mention the way you mention a storm you remember, with respect, not spectacle. And because of all the fear, and honestly, because of all the grief in these stories, a special day was established in the area to pray for the poor souls. And locals say that after that, things became calmer, fewer sightings, less heaviness in the valleys at night. But even now, the old rule remains. If you ever see the lights, you don't call out. You don't chase them. You don't try to prove anything. You pray, for them, and for yourself. Because they aren't like the classic will-o'-the-wisp stories that feel mischievous or trickster-like. These lights feel older, quieter, almost sad. And once you've heard these stories, you start to understand why people don't talk about them like a fun legend. They talk about them like a warning and like a kindness. Just let them be seen, let them be prayed for, and keep walking home.